Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Was Aizawa's Only Student? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Class had only just started, and Uraraka tensed as the numb feeling of dread washed over her. The man standing before them, their teacher, had this look of utter apathy on his face as he stood behind his desk, slipping off his garish yellow monstrosity of a sleeping bag. No one dared to make a sound as he spoke, his voice as bland as the expression on his face. My name is Shoyuta Aizawa, and I will be your homeroom teacher for the year. The dread rocketed up her tension, and she knew others in the room were feeling the same. At least, the ones who recognized the name from the whispers traveling around the school as they arrived this morning. Their homeroom teacher had a reputation, and judging by the knowing glint in his eyes as he recognized the clear tension in the room, he was very well aware of it. Good to see that some of you already know what to expect from me. That means I don't have to sugarcoat this, he drawled, looking more amused the more people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. To confirm some of rumors you undoubtedly heard, yes, I do have a reputation for expelling students, and I do have the highest expulsion rate of any other teacher at UA. No, I do not have the patience to deal with any students I determine to have zero potential. And yes, an eerie smirk crossed his face, and Uraraka could barely stop herself from leaning back away from the man. I did, in fact, expel a majority of my homeroom class last year. And no, I will not hesitate to do it again if I see fit. The silence finally broke, with gasps of shock and mutters of disbelief scattering around the room as everyone worked themselves up into a panicked frenzy. One boy, one that Uraraka had noticed eyeing the girls a little too closely and had overheard from taller girl with a ponytail had made inappropriate grabs at her before class, suddenly shot up from his seat, standing on his chair as he cried out, "You can't do that. It's not fair dash. Sit down." Silence reigned once again, and she swore their teacher's red eyes were glowing as he spoke. Here at UA, you will find that we do not conform to typical school teaching practices and policies. In my class, I have the leeway to teach as I see fit, and anyone I deem to have zero potential is immediately recommended for expulsion. Why? The question slips out before she can stop it, and she jolts when the teacher's gaze snaps to her. She does not cower though, taking a deep breath as she elaborates. Why would you decide someone has zero potential? He stares at her, seeming to assess her, as if he were deciding whether or not to give her an answer. Then he bluntly states, because you are training to be heroes. This isn't a career to be taken lightly. Your potential could be the difference between life or death. The pause, letting the words, the meaning sink in. I am here to teach you, not send you to an early grave. I will not accept anything less. And despite the harshness behind his words, Uraraka found the tension in her shoulders finally easing. This was not an act of cruelty on his part. His words, his coldness, his harsh reality were all coming from a place of genuine care. Because they were in heroics. They were all signing on for a dangerous career, a career where one wrong move, the wrong decision, even just being slightly underprepared could lead to their or a citizen's demise. And while she couldn't quite smile, she found herself slowly nodding, a small bit of warmth settling in her heart knowing that no matter what their teacher threw at them, some part of him did truly care for them. Seeming satisfied with her reaction, he turned his attention back to the class as a whole. Now, due to my expulsion rate and the fact that UA curriculum is so flexible, we do have a bit of a conundrum this year. A hand shot up, and after Aizawa nodded his head, Uraraka turned to watch as a familiar classmate shot up from his seat. Stiff as a board and arm chopping through the air in a way that made Uraraka have to hold back giggles, Tenya Ida loudly queried, "Sir, does this have anything to do with the empty desk in the back corner of the room, and why only 19 students are present?" Sighing heavily, Aizawa dropped into his chair at his own desk. Yes, it does have something to do with the desk, though you all only have 19 because a student was expelled this morning due to improper conduct off school grounds. He said the last bit so casually, not noticing how everyone paled at the fact that the first day had only just begun and someone was already expelled. I know I said that I expelled most of my class last year. Which is true. However, what I neglected to elaborate on was that I expelled all but one student last year. The low murmurs began to rise in the room, and she could have sworn that she saw the loud and explosive blonde kid, the one that had been telling off and even coming close to threatening Ida before class, stiffen in his seat. Due to having only one student in my class last year, I was able to streamline my teaching style and have more focused, intensive training sessions with him, Aizawa elaborated. That paired with the students' above-average learning capabilities and well, he shrugged as he casually stated, I kind of ran out of things to teach him. Silence. Then, a confused, you mean you finished the first-year curriculum with him? Aizawa blinked. No. I mean he finished all of the UA Heroics curriculum. The pause. Oh, and the optional supplementary courses. Then, he added, I got bored and made up some stuff towards the end of the semester too. Okay, Uraraka's tension was back with a vengeance. The pink-haired girl off to her right audibly gulped. Our senpai sounds terrifying. Aizawa shrugged. Sometimes. A voice behind her whispered. He didn't even try to deny it. But yes, it has become an issue for the school, their teacher continued, seeming to either not notice or not care about the rising panic. In the class. While he was able to gain his provisional license over the summer, the Hero Commission will not budge on allowing him to get his hero license until he reaches 18 years of age. Which is even worse considering the problem child had already skipped a grade before coming to UA-. He's our age. The invisible girl shrieked as the explosive blonde loudly swore, his hands gripping the edge of his desk tightly as he seemed to realize something. The glowing red-eyed glare was back. Yes. He is. Groaning in exasperation, he rose from his desk. Thankfully, Nedzu had a solution on how to occupy his next few years at UA. Striding towards the door, he yanked it open and ordered out into the hall. Problem child, get in here. He was decidedly not what she was expecting. Carrying a well-worn, bright yellow backpack over his shoulder, a hastily and poorly done tie around his neck, and just the slightest bit of a nervous hunch, the boy in question was nothing short of cute. Like, not the overtly attractive sort of cute, but the, I want to put you in my pocket and take you home with me, sort of way. She had the overwhelming urge to both protect him and pat the fluffy, dark green curls on his head. And maybe pinch his freckled cheeks while she was at it. The boy did his best to stand tall in front of them, nervously smiling, and she became acutely aware of the scar over his left brow, followed shortly by the more prominent scars along the hands gripping tightly to his bag. Meet Izuku Midoriya, Aizawa introduced as said boy waved nervously at the class. Class 1, as first ever teaching assistant and your senpai. 1 year ago. Aizawa surveyed the classroom with a distasteful eye. Not even 2 seconds in the door, and he already spotted 4 students to expel. Their situation awareness was not only atrocious, but 2 were openly making out in the room, another drawing what looked like quirkist comments on his desk, and lastly, one was openly bragging about how he was a legacy and openly threatening students to do as he says or he would get them blacklisted in the hero industry. There was not enough coffee in the world to make him able to deal with this bullshit. Walking in the room, no one even noticed him. What did he have to do? Roll himself through the door in that yellow eyesore of a sleeping bag that Hazashi gave him as a GG gift? Part of him even considered saying it and walking out on them all. But then he noticed a small, hunched figure in the back corner eyeing him curiously. Ah, so maybe not all of them are hopeless. But then he recognized the mop of green curly hair and that hope died. Because he remembered this boy's display during the entrance exam. How he rushed in to save a fellow test taker and shattered his arm and legs in the process, and nearly died falling to the ground had ectoplasm not been on standby with clones to catch him. He knew this boy very well. And he knew that by the end of the day, he would prove that Midoriya Izuku had no place in heroics. Present time. Midoriya Izuku was, arguably, terrifying. Aizawa had known the boy for the past year now, not only having the privilege of watching him grow in skill at an unprecedented rate but also having the honor of being a large factor behind that tremendous growth. At least, he liked to think that in the privacy of his mind. Whereas Yagi took the role of the boy's mentor, aiding in building up his determination and character, Aizawa was his sensei. The one that both pushed him to his limits and kept the boy in check. The one whose job was to chip away at the old Midoriya while helping him mold his new skin. The one that took the potential in front of him and handed over the tools to make the boy into something greater, something more. And at only 15 years of age, Izuku had crafted himself well enough to be a truly remarkable hero, perhaps the greatest, if Aizawa admitted to himself. Unfortunately, through all those one-on-one lessons, all the blood, sweat, and tears, all the breakthroughs and triumphs that they experienced, Aizawa had somehow made one horrific and possibly costly oversight. Izuku was awkward. Okay, if it was that alone, it might not be that bad. His awkwardness could often be written off as, in Nemuri's words, cute. And that boyish, bashful nature of his could work great in the hero industry. But Midoriya had underlying issues that made things more complicated. Case in point? The boy in question stood tense, back straight as an arrow, as waves of what Aizawa knew to be palpable fear rolled off of him as the boy was bombarded with a verifiable storm of voices and questions. While the past year had garnered an easy rapport between he and his prized problem child, though that had been a hard-fought battle, one harder still in those early months where Yagi had stupidly hidden the true nature of Izuku's quirk, Izuku had spent the last year with very minimal contact with other students. While most students spent their years learning teamwork and camaraderie amongst their class, they had accidentally spent the year training Izuku into essentially being a one-man army. Not that the boy was incapable of working with others. No, Izuku was a strategist at heart, a leader of the people who carried an air about him that made people listen and want to follow him into whatever convoluted scheme that he crafted. However, the boy was completely blind to his effect on people, forcing himself to melt into the background as to avoid drawing another's ire. He pretended to be okay, but clearly his years of being quirkless affected him more harshly than he would admit. The solution? Trial by fire. Midoriya-senpai, did you really finish all the hero course classes in a year? What type of quirk do you have? I bet it's super powerful, dude. Did you finish all 3 years of the academic classes as well as the heroics coursework? Are you going to be working with just us or the other heroics class? 2. Guys, look how red his face is. Oh my god, he's so adorable. Okay, enough torturing the kid. Slamming a hand down on his desk, his eyes flared red from his quirk, and the entire class gaze whipped towards him and off of his problem child, who looked like a deer caught in a pair of headlights. Most had jumped at the loud sound, though his kid just slumped a bit, relaxing at not being the center of attention for the moment. Clearing his throat, he conjured up the most unenthused voice he could muster as he dug a stack of gym clothes out of his sleeping bag and tossed them on his desk. Quit harassing the problem child and change into these. We're doing a quirk assessment test. But sir, one of the boys, Ida he thinks, interjected. What about the opening ceremony? Like I said before, this class is structured as I see fit, Aizawa droned out. If you care more about ceremonies, then leave now. Otherwise, head to the changing rooms and meet me outside, quickly. Midoriya will show you where to go. The boy in question let out a surprised eep sound, but took a calming breath before offering a wobbly smile. Yeah, if everyone could follow me. He moved to the door, but when he saw no one moving, just staring in confusion over everything that was happening, he frowned. Aizawa-sensei expelled 3 of last year's students just for tardiness. Everyone scrambled from their seats and all but shoved Izuku out the door, leaving Aizawa to wonder if it were cruel of him to already be pawning this class off on his obviously uncomfortable assistant. Izuku was stressed. Not that feeling stressed was an unusual thing for him. No, it was a common day-to-day occurrence for the boy to have some form of tension or minor dread when facing the world. The main issue at hand, however, was just how far out of his metaphorical comfort zone he had been thrown. For a moment, he thought this is how a baby bird must feel being thrown out of a perfectly good nest and be expected to fly. Aizawa had basically shoved him out of the nest, but done so with a pack of hungry wolves circling just below. Okay, so he was being a bit melodramatic, but given his childhood and abandonment issues, he felt this was justified. And to make matters even worse, part of said childhood was stalking along behind him, silently glaring a hole in the back of his head. But a voice just next to him broke him from his thoughts. "What are you muttering about?" Jolting in place, he felt his face grow red as he turned his attention to the girl smiling serenely next to him. Everyone else had been trailing along behind him, talking in quiet or what was supposed to be quiet whispers. This girl was the first to actually approach him, a cute brown bob haircut and pink-tinged cheeks. Overall, ridiculously cute and far from someone Izuku was used to conversing with. "Oh, well," he let out a nervous laugh as he scratched his head. "It's, a bad habit of mine. The muttering. I do it when I'm lost in thought, sorry." "You don't have to apologize. I thought it was cute," she chirped, still smiling brightly and having no idea about the inner panic attack Izuku was currently suffering from. "My name is Uraraka Ochako." He relaxed a bit, settling at the calm but bright presence the girl exuded. "It's good to meet you, Uraraka. Oh, here we are." Everyone halted as he turned, mustering his best smile though it wavered under the attention. "All right, everyone change quickly, and then I will show you to the practice fields." As all the students filed into the changing rooms, he took a calming breath. Everything was fine, things would be okay. He could do this. Today would be just fine. "Whoa, dude, are you okay?" Never mind, things weren't fine anymore. Trying to keep the grimace off his face was hard under the weight of all the stares. He knew that changing with the rest of the boys would mean letting them see, but he had not expected someone to actually say something out loud. To give the poor blonde kid he thinks someone called him Kaminari some credit, he did not seem to really process that he had spoken out loud either until another boy elbowed him in the gut and a boy with bright red hair muttered, "Not a manly question, dude." Plastering on a weak smile, Izuku played it off as if he wasn't standing shirtless in front of dozen-plus peers with scars littered across his arms and torso. "I'm fine really. My quirk was difficult to and well," he gave a helpless shrug. "Recovery girl can only heal so much." Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say as several sets of eyes seemed to pop out of some of the boys' heads, someone shouting, "That was caused by your own quirk?" Izuku visibly shrunk. "Well." The boy with bulky tape dispensers in his elbows jumped in. "Wait, even the one on your chest?" And that's the moment when Izuku visibly shut down. He could feel his face go blank, his back stiffen and go ramrod straight as his nails dug into his palms. The room felt tight, and he could practically feel the dull phantom pulse of the jagged scar spreading out from the center of his chest, the pain, the numbness, the fear. "You must be my player too." A locker door slammed shut. Pestering people about their scars is rude. All eyes turned to settle on the speaker in question, who calmly and serenely glanced around at the other occupants with an almost bored expression, though his eyes seemed to glint in challenge. "I suggest changing the topic." No one argued with him. The fact that he sported his own scar across his face certainly drove home his authority on the matter. Seeming satisfied with the silence that followed, Midoriya found himself pinned under the boy's gaze which switched from intense to something calmer? He wasn't sure. All he could really think about in that moment was how striking the boy looked, his hair perfectly split along with his heterochromatic eyes. It made him want to ask questions, wondering distantly if his quirk was split just like his physical features, but his throat felt like it was welded shut. The other boy broke the silence, speaking to Midoriya directly. "I will be waiting in the hall for your directions." Izuku could only manage to nod. Soon, Izuku is leading a majority of the class out to the field, a few stragglers hurrying to catch up, only to hear a distinctive yelp from one of the girls. Whipping around, he's about to ask what was wrong when he sees it. The shorter boy, Mineta, grinning lecherously up at one of the girls with his hand on her rear. Midoriya moved before he could think. "What in the hell do you think you're doing?" "Oh my god, he's swearing," someone quietly whispered as everyone watched their supposedly shy cinnamon roll of a senpai turn venom-filled eyes on the tiny pervert. The boy in question shrieked, and Midoriya slowly realized that he had the boy by the back of his shirt held up in the air as he pleaded out excuses. "It was nothing. I wasn't hurting her. I was only just dash." Where did you get the idea that touching anyone like that is nothing? His tone prompted Mineta to burst into tears, but he couldn't be bothered to care. Turning his attention to the girl in question, he softly asked, "Yaoyorozu, right? Are you okay?" Though she clearly looked flustered, the girl nodded quickly. He didn't hurt me. But just, I'm sorry for the trouble. Do not apologize because he assaulted you, came Midoriya's response, his words kind but offering no room for argument. He had no right to touch you. It's not the first time the pervert has tried this, snapped another girl who moved to stand next to Yaoyorozu. She had what looked like earphone jacks hanging from her ears and short, choppy purple hair framing her scowling face. Plus, he tried to look at us when we were changing through a hole in the wall. What? The dark look on his face grew worse, and Mineta's sobbing only intensified, plastering on a sickeningly sweet smile that made everyone take a healthy step back. Midoriya coolly replied, "Let's hurry to meet up with Aizawa-sensei." As he moved again, still holding Mineta by the collar of his shirt, everyone silently followed after him, exchanging glances that clearly said, "What the F dash?" 1 year ago, Aizawa was going to have to deal with so many angry parents this year. He wasn't sure what was in the air, but after booting those first 4 who in turn threw literal tantrums, the rest were dropping like flies. One threatened him with his blade quirk because his friend was the quirkest brat, another threw a fit about having to do a quirk assessment, and now he was about to boot 3 more because he had been waiting half an hour for them to finish changing. All the while, Midoriya stood off to the side, somehow managing to look determined and terrified at the same time. Internally, he let out a heavy sigh. He hated the fact that he was essentially waiting for the boy to shatter a limb to expel him, but what else could he do? He reasonably cannot keep a kid that breaks his bones every time he activated his quirk. He would just get himself and others killed. Aizawa refused to have blood on his hands. A part of him mulled the idea of giving the boy extra training to control his quirk, but did he deserve it? Who has a quirk for 10 years and never bothers to use it at all? Because clearly the boy has no experience with it. That just shows signs of clear laziness. He ignores the determined look on the boy's face, the way he eagerly follows orders, the look of absolute shock and adoration when he stopped that other kid from using his water quirk on him as they left the room. Maybe he will give him a chance. A warning. Let him know that he won't tolerate his self-destructive streak. It's up to him what he makes of it. Present time. Aizawa had expected a lot of different scenarios for when his new assistant returned with his class. He expected to see the boy with stressed looks, panicked rambling, perhaps even a rare tired and resigned gaze to match his own. Hell, he even accounted for the scenario where the boy managed to wrap the entire class up with his shy, boyish charm. Never did he expect his problem child to return with that look on his face. The smile was disturbing to say the least, paired with the tightness around his eyes, and the boy certainly did nothing to ease the growing dread in his gut. He knew that it had to do with the Mineta boy currently being hauled towards him like a bag of trash while the rest of the class nervously trailed behind, though a few, the girls especially, had looks of righteous vindication on their faces. This is going to involve a lot of paperwork. As Izuka beelined straight to him, Aizawa called out, "What did he do to piss you off, problem child?" His question was answered with a question. "You said that I'm allowed to make recommendations for expulsions, correct?" Several small gasps broke out from the class as Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "Yes. So long as you have a good reason." Multiple counts of SXL harassment. The smile dropped from Midoriya's face, who in turn dropped Mineta to the ground with a disgusted sneer. Both verbal and physical. Aizawa couldn't stop his quirk from flaring to life even if he wanted to. What? He could just barely hear the quietly mumbled, "Holy shit, he's scarier than Midoriya-senpai." Everything was currently very awkward. With his anger dissipating after Aizawa led Mineta off to his doom, Principal Nedzu, he found himself very flustered and at a loss for words. It was rare that he ever lost his temper like that, and usually it would only be towards actual villains, but he supposed it would not be a stretch to call Mineta a villain at this point. Still, everyone just sat around quietly, sharing hushed whispers and sneaking occasional glances at him. With a defeated groan, he dropped to the ground, drawing his knees up to his chest and burying his face into them. Maybe if he just stayed like this long enough, he'll disappear and everyone will forget he exists. Excuse me, Midoriya-senpai? His head snapped up, blinking in confusion. Oh, Yaoyorozu, is everything all right? She offered him a shy smile. Wanted to thank you. His head tilted in genuine confusion. What for? For having Mineta expelled. He could feel his face heat up as he quickly stuttered, Oh, no, that's Aizawa-sensei. I don't have that kind of power dash. You were the one to recommend expulsion to him, interjected the girl with the earphone jacks from before. Gyre, someone had called her Gyre. You took us seriously. This kind of stuff usually gets excused or brushed aside. Frowning, he replies, that behavior isn't ever acceptable, and especially not in a heroics department. None of the teachers will tolerate that. And apparently you won't either, senpai. Another girl, the one a brilliant shade of pink and who had called him adorable earlier, cooed. His face felt even warmer as he ducked his head. Why you guys don't have to call me senpai? I'm your age after all. Well, no offense, dude, interjected the blonde boy who had pointed out his scars earlier. But you are, mildly terrifying. It's kind of hard to process that you are our age. A loud scoff drew everyone's attention towards the familiar face sitting off to the side of the group. The nerd isn't that FNG special. With a weak smile, Midoriya couldn't help but say, Good to see you too, Kaken. Don't call me that, Deku. Wait. Uraraka shouted, looking between the glowering Bakugo and the nervously inching away Midoriya. Do you two know each other? Sheepishly laughing while Bakugo looked like he was attempting to burn holes into his head, Midoriya explained. Our moms were friends growing up. Kaken and I have known each other since we were little. Bakugo let out a displeased huff. I can't believe a quirkless nerd like you actually made it into the FING heroics department. Wait, did you say quirkless? One of the girls, the invisible one, practically screeched. Midoriya winced. I'm not quirkless, Kaken. That got an interesting reaction. Of course you're effing quirkless, he snapped, jumping to his feet and stalking closer. I don't know how you FING tricked the DMN teachers, but you never had a quirk. You have the extra toe bone and everything. This is getting out of hand. Hunching his shoulders and trying his best to not provoke his childhood friend, he cautiously explained, Apparently I was a later bloomer dash. Explosions crackled in the boy's hands as he got close enough to tower over Izuku, who visibly flinched back. That is enough. Everyone spun to stare at their sensei, who casually strolled up to the group, hands in his pockets as he drawled out, Unless you want to end up expelled like Mineta, I suggest you calm down, Baku. Eyes narrowed, Bakugo stepped back from Midoriya, but he did not back down. I've known this nerd for years. Deku has never had a FING quirk, and now he suddenly has one and is a top FING hero student. He shot a venomous look towards Midoriya, who simply shrunk more under his gaze as Uraraka dropped to his side, glaring at Bakugo. What kind of sick butt joke is this? It's not a joke, Bakugo, Aizawa drawled out, sounding almost bored, though his eyes screamed that his patience was running thin. While yes, Midoriya's late bloomer status can be a bit jarring, it does not warrant your current behavior. And need I remind you that Midoriya is not only your senior, but also my assistant. That means that while you don't have to like him, you have to at least respect him. The blonde scowled, but then had a feral grin on his face. Fine then. If Deku has such an amazing quirk now, he side-eyed the boy that could barely look at him from where he knelt on the ground, Uraraka's arm wrapped protectively around him. Prove it. The bored, irritated look melted away, his eyes glinting at the challenge as a grin even more feral than Bakugo's slowly stretched across his face. Very well then, Aizawa practically chirped in a way that made almost everyone step back in fear. Why not make a little challenge of it? Midoriya let out a yelp as he realized where Aizawa was going with this. Pulling a ball out of seemingly nowhere, Aizawa tossed it towards the explosive blonde. What was your farthest ball toss in middle school? Bakugo's eyes narrowed suspiciously. 67 meters. With an absent nod, the teacher pointed to a track and field style throwing circle. Try throwing that with your quirk. The suspicion melted away to the familiar feral excitement. You asked for it. Striding forward towards the circle, Bakugo took a second to center himself. He gripped the ball, leaned back. Die! Despite the nervous tension in his shoulders, the greenette couldn't help the semi-fond sigh. Well, Kakin sure hasn't changed. You mean he's always been this much of a bully? Uraraka muttered next to him while everyone freaked out at the explosive throw, watching the ball disappear into the distance before Aizawa called out a throwing distance of 705.2 meters. Grimacing, Midoriya quietly mumbled, "He's not the best with handling emotions." At the girl's deadpan stare, he winced. I know, understatement. Problem child. Midoriya jolted upright, blinking owlishly as the teacher tossed him another ball. You're up. Gulping, the boy shakily got to his feet, heading off towards the ball throw as he tried to plan in his head how exactly he was going to do this. His capabilities with One for All, while not near the max limits yet, were much farther than last year. And while his throw last year had been at 100%, the efficiency of using that much power in only one finger was not very high. Izuku. Jolting out of his muttering, he whipped his head towards his teacher, a silent conversation happening between the two. He liked to think they were close, having forged a connection through the past year. Despite calling him a problem child, there was obvious affection between the pair, and in his head, Midoriya had shoved Aizawa into some brother-slash-father role that thankfully, the man didn't seem to mind. Ignoring the whispers of the other students who noticed the familiar use of Midoriya's first name, Aizawa just gave him a sly grin. Keep it at 10%. Midoriya nodded, turning back away as the teacher added, Oh, and why don't you show off a little? Midoriya was a good person. Almost too good at times, ready to risk himself without hesitation if he thought he could save someone. But while Midoriya at his heart was still as pure and noble as All Might, he had spent the past year being molded and trained by Aizawa. So, despite all the noble intentions, all the dedication, the drive, the do-gooder attitude, Aizawa had turned Midoriya into a little sheet. And the man knew just how to provoke the little sheet into causing a bit of amusing chaos. Back in the staff room, Yagi felt a shiver down his spine as his thoughts suddenly turned to what his successor and Aizawa could be up to right now. Surely nothing too worrisome? Yagi decided to find out where the class currently was. Uraraka slipped next Yaoyorozu and Ida, glancing nervously between them. What did he mean by 10%? Oh, that. Aizawa said with a grin that was just a bit too gleeful. Midoriya took the ball, tested it in his hand as jagged, glowing red lines began to cross along his skin. Green lightning crackled in the air around him, his eyes lighting up to almost a toxic shade of green, and they all watched as he sharply tossed the ball straight up into the air. Before they could even begin to question what he was doing, he began to spin in the circle, his body blurring and twisting in practiced motions that were far too smooth as the ball descended back down. And with a twist and kick faster than they could see, the ball went flying. Shock waves from the force of the kick hit them all, and several students struggled to stay upright. Uraraka gripped tightly to Ida's arm as she squinted against the wind, and glancing to the side, she could see several of the students using their quirks to stay upright. The boy with the split hair had frozen his and Yaoyorozu's feet to the ground and was steadying her. The red head seemed as if his skin turned to rock as his hands stuck into the hard-packed soil, and several students clung to him. Others, like the invisible girl and the electric blonde, Kaminari, had fallen over from the force, staring with panicked and stunned looks on their faces. The wind settled soon after the throw, all eyes locked onto the boy crouched in a landing position in the thrower's circle. No one could even hope to see where the ball was, and they all stared in stunned silence until Aizawa broke it. I meant to keep it at 10% of his max power. Glancing at the device in his hands, he nodded, seeming satisfied as he called out, 2,173 meters. Not bad, problem child. The boy quickly rose and spun to them, beaming so brightly and with a smile so pure, but an almost vicious satisfaction flashed in his eyes for just a moment before he chirped in a way that was too similar to Aizawa's earlier words. Thank you, sir. Hello, terror, muttered the boy with the bird's head and what looked like a shadow demon clutching to his shoulder. Thy name is Midoriya. Uraraka could only nod as several of her classmates muttered, "Mood." Thankfully, for Aizawa's sanity, the rest of the tests went rather smoothly. His eyes stayed locked on Bakugu for most of the testing, carefully assessing the boy for any retaliation after Izuku's power display. Thankfully, the boy seemed to have been cowed into SBM-sen by Izuku's results, at least for now. The explosive blonde simply hung towards the edges of the group with a sullen look on his face, occasionally throwing glares tinged with disbelief towards the problem child. Aizawa was aware that Izuku had not had the most pleasant of pasts due to his past quirklessness. Those times where they had ended training sessions early and the pro managed to drag half-statements and hesitant truths from his prize student had made him very well aware what he had faced. While yes, a fifth of the population were quirkless, 90% of the quirkless population were above the age of 50, and the younger population were prone to facing a large range of discrimination. Children could be cruel. And Izuku flinching when others shouted was certainly a learned behavior. Meeting Bakugu and seeing his reaction to Izuku answered just as many questions as it created. They certainly knew each other, and despite Izuku's attempts at being kind, it was clear that Bakugu had not extended the same courtesy in a long while, if ever. He would have to keep a close eye on the pair in the future to ensure that this does not become an issue. For now, he trusted his student to let him know if anything of note transpires between the two. Speaking of his student, Midoriya sat on the sidelines of each event, watching with unbridled awe as each of the class used their quirks in various ways to help improve their scores. His hand flew across the page of his notebook with familiar ease, jotting out notes even as his eyes stayed locked on the groups before him. Though Aizawa had tried pushing for the kid to switch from notebook to a laptop to save his hands from cramping, Izuku remained firm. The notebooks were a comfort for him, and allowed him more ease on adding captions and diagrams on the various quirks. He ducked his face into his capture weapon to hide his smile. This was why he knew taking on the boy as his assistant would work so well. While All Might's quirk had required a steep learning curve for Midoriya, analysis had always been second nature for him. He dissected quirks with ease, and the talent he displayed for it was something that he had only seen rivaled in Netsu of all people. Which gave him momentary terror as he remembered that the boy's free PRD this year would be with the little rat Satan, but he purposely killed that train of thought and left the terror for another day. The rest of the class simply cast Izuku curious glances as he muttered indecipherably to himself, questions on the tips of their tongues but none working up the nerve to interrupt their senpai. Whether out of fear or respect towards the terrifying little problem child, Aizawa wasn't sure, but the cold and dead part of his heart thawed slightly as he realized that none of the looks were malicious in any way. They all had varying degrees of acceptance to almost fondness, judging by the way a few hovered near him to try and glance at the notebook. Uraraka even dropped down to sit beside his student in between tests, a soft smile on her face. Yes, he was very happy with his decision to keep the boy close. Adoption jokes from the other teachers be dmed. Class 1A chat. Midoriya, hello, everyone. I received permission from Aizawa-sensei to set up this chat room to keep everyone in the loop in regards to class updates and assignments. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to tag me, or message me privately if you want. I will try to respond as swiftly as I can. Plus Ultra. Kaminari, you what up my dudes? Siro, IE man. Ashido, HI everybody. Kirishima, hello. Jairu, it's been 30 seconds, and I can already tell that this chat was a mistake. Ida, greetings fellow classmates. Yairozu, hello everyone. Uraraka at Jairu, I'm sure it won't be too bad. Bakugu, this sheet, I'm out. Bakugu has left the chat. Uraraka, see? Already better. Kaminari, oh HBURN. Ishido, Ida, Uraraka-san. Midoriya has added Bakugu to the chat. Bakugu, what the F dash? Midoriya, sorry, Kaken. The chat is mandatory for class updates. Bakugu, FF. Midoriya, also, swearing isn't allowed. Kaminari, yeah, Kaken. Bakugu, don't call me that, Pikachu. Bakugu, it's bad enough that the nerd calls me that sheet, none of you better start. Midoriya, Kaken, language. Bakugu, die, Deku. Yaoyorozu, oh. Uraraka, you know, if his face accidentally smacks into my hand and he floats into the sun, it could totally be seen as an accident, right? Ida, Uraraka. Do not stoop to his level of threats. Bakugu, watch yourself, round face. Zero, should we be concerned? Midoriya, usually yes, but Kakin is being rather tame if I'm being honest. Midoriya, also, sorry everyone for not clarifying. The chat is only meant for class discussions and things relating to that. So, non-class related discussions will have to be kept to a minimum. I'm sorry. Kirishima, it's okay, Midori bro. Kaminari, oh, come on, we won't talk about anything bad. Midoriya, sorry. It's the only compromise I could get with Aizawa-sensei. He doesn't want the chat to blow up his phone. Ashido, wait, he's in the chat. Aizawa, yes. Kaminari, Ida, Aizawa-sensei. I am terribly sorry for our behavior in the chat thus far. Midoriya, you haven't done anything bad. It's fine. Jairu, Midoriya, there have been 3 death threats already. Midoriya, I'm trying my best. The second day was the first official day of classes. Homeroom was rather uneventful, Aizawa simply rattling off necessary announcements before handing off the responsibility of keeping everyone in line to Midoriya before dropping to the floor in his hideous, yellow caterpillar suit. Naturally, seeing as how no one had a chance to corner Izuku after the quirk assessment test the day before, with him having to head off with Aizawa to discuss class details, they took this as an opportunity to pelt him with questions. So, what's your class schedule like? Uraraka asked, pulling her chair closer as she casually leaned on his desk. She seemed to be the most comfortable around him compared to the others in the class. Not that the others were wary of him, but she just seemed to treat him less like her senpai and more like a good friend, a fact that meant more to him than he knew how to put into words. His nerves were still a little frayed over everything that had happened yesterday, and he appreciated the ease in which she approached him. The fact that she also seemed to have appointed herself as an unofficial bodyguard against Kakin certainly wasn't forgotten either. It's a bit of a mess, if I'm being honest, he replied sheepishly. I'm ahead in several academic classes as well as having placed out of a few of them. I'm currently set to start 4 academic classes with the 3rd years this semester as well as taking some private lessons with a couple teachers. Ida began to chop his hand through the air as he chimed in. That is most impressive, Midoriya. It is an honor to have someone as talented as yourself to help lead our class. Flushing bright red, he stammered back. It's nothing. I had one-on-one with the teachers all last year. Don't discount your efforts. You still could have simply settled into the standard class pace, Yaoyorozu pointed out with a serene smile. He smiled meekly. Yeah, I guess so. We totally need to work on your confidence, man, Kirishima chimed in as he strolled over with a big smile. Being modest is totally manly, but you deserve to have a little faith in yourself. Before Izuku could respond, Mina jumped in. Are we going to just ignore the fact that Midoriya-senpai is taking 3rd-year classes? Glancing at the boy in awe, she adds, what are you even going to do once you finish those? With a helpless shrug he replies, we honestly don't know at this point. I'll probably keep assisting Aizawa-sensei if he approves of my work this year as well as take on some work studies, and Powerloader has been suggesting I take some support courses. Some of the teachers have thrown around the idea of me teaching an elective course. After my 3rd year, since I will have a gap year before I am old enough to take the hero licensing exam, but nothing is set in stone. That we have mentioned you are terrifying, right, senpai? Yes, and I still don't understand why. Midori Protection Squad. Ashido, okay, this chat took way too long to set up. Drew, what is this? Jairu, why did you make a group chat entirely identical to our class chat? Kaminari, it's not completely the same. Ashido, we left out Aizawa-sensei and Midoriya-senpai. Yaoyorozu, I understand wanting a chat without our teacher in it, but it feels a little rude to exclude Midoriya. Kirishima, it's totally not meant like that. Kirishima, we were just talking and are all a little concerned about him. Ashido, like seriously. Ashido, he's so talented. Ashido, but he has no confidence. Toru, He makes me want to wrap him up in a blanket and fight something. Toru, I don't know what to fight. Toru, but I will fight. Uraraka, if this is a chat for protecting Midoriya, why is Bakugo in here? Bakugo, you wanna go? Let's go. Sato, you gotta admit, you haven't been the nicest to him, man. Kirishima, Bakugo, you knew Midoriya before UA, right? Bakugo, shitty hair. I ain't getting involved in this bullshit. Uraraka, isn't it obvious though? Uraraka, Midoriya was bullied before UA. Uraraka, and I bet my entire month's budget that Bakugo was one of the ones who bullied him. Kaminari, dude. Bakugo, you don't know shit, round face. Uraraka, I know a bully when I see one. Ida, if this is true, then that would be a serious offense. UA has a zero-tolerance policy on bullying. Kirishima, you gotta admit, man, it doesn't look good. Bakugo, hell. Bakugo, look, the nerd and I used to be friends when we were brats. Bakugo, we grew apart, and then Deku moved up a grade in primary school, and we barely ever saw each other except when he and his mom came over to eat. Bakugo, I barely talked to the FING nerd, so if he was bullied recently, I had no part in it. Uraraka, recently? Beach. Bakugo, yes, I'm a piece of shit and I had even less filters as a brat, okay? The nerd was a effing ray of sunshine 24/7, and I have the patience of a starving badger. Bakugo, I wasn't that FNG vindictive as to hunt him out to specifically bully him or to find out if anyone else was bullying him. Bakugo, but I will say that FANG Deku didn't have a quirk in middle school. Everyone knew he was diagnosed quirkless, and unless you were living under a rock your entire childhood, quirkless kids are the bottom of the food chain. Yaoyorozu, I hadn't realized that the quirkless were treated in such a way. Zero, but he obviously has a quirk now. Bakugo, I have no FNG how he pulled that power out of his butt. Bakugo, but yeah. Are you extras FNG satisfied now? Uraraka, you should still be nicer to him. Bakugo, F-. Bakugo has left the chat. Jiru, well, he lasted longer than I thought he would. Kirishima, is it bad that I'm relieved he wasn't a main bully of Midoriya? Kirishima, like, it's still totally not manly about his behavior. Kirishima, but I'm glad he wasn't regularly attacking Midoriya in the past. Zero, small victories I guess? Uraraka, I'm still not completely against the idea of tossing him into the sun. Ida, Uraraka. Todoroki, why am I in this chat? Kirishima, dude, you totally belong here. You protected Midoriya in the locker room yesterday. Todoroki, I what? Uraraka, he what? Ida, yes, it was quite honorable when you stepped in to stop Kaminari and Zero from pestering Midoriya about his scars. Uraraka, they what? Zero, that she can't actually yeet us into the sun? Jiru, her score on the ball throw was infinity. You tell me. Kaminari, fear. You would think after a year of knowing the man, the little rush of fan worship would wear off by now. I am here. But then that's just how Izuku is. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might declares in a booming voice, having slammed the door open upon his entrance in a way that normal person would certainly not do. Izuku watched with practical stars in his eyes as his mentor introduced himself to the starstruck class, announcing that he would be teaching their heroics class. Then with a dramatic tone he announced, of course, no hero is complete without clicking a button on a remote. Draws popped out of the wall with a hiss, numbered cases coming out along with them. A costume! Shouts of shock and joy erupted throughout the class, everyone buzzing with excitement. Even Bakugo muttered an enthusiastic, hell yes. Midoriya couldn't help the small, fond smile on his face as he looked around at everyone, remembering back to his excitement over his first costume. While the suit his mom had ordered didn't last long, it was still one of his favorite memories. Now, if everyone could retrieve their respective case and head out to change into their costumes, the pro hero instructed in a booming voice. Also, a few of you have support equipment that did not fit into the normal size case, so you will find additional chests in the locker rooms with the rest of your costumes. Now, he struck a dramatic pose and bellowed, let's get to it. Plus Ultra. Plus Ultra. cried out several members of the class as everyone beelined to the cases. As they all chattered excitedly and made their way to the door, All Might's voice casually drifted above the noise. "Ah, I have your updated suit in the teacher's lounge, Izuka my boy." They all came to a screeching halt. Wait, is Midoriya-senpai on a first-name basis with All Might? Kaminari practically screeched as all eyes whipped towards the pair. Midoriya looked panicked while All Might had a look on his face that clearly screamed, "Oh shit." Bakugo just looked said, "When the f did this happen, Deku?" Midoriya let out a sheepish laugh as he nervously inched towards the door. Well you see." A large hand clamped on the back of his neck. "Time is of the essence." All Might quickly announced and then all but booked it out the door, carrying Midoriya by the scruff of his uniform. Everyone just stared after them in utter confusion and were left with even more questions about their senpai than they had before. Well, that went okay. All Might slumped in his small Might form and now ridiculously baggy uniform, wringing his hands with a worried look on his face. "I am sorry, my boy. I know we had planned to keep the fact that we knew each other a secret, but—" Izuku quickly shook his head with a panicked expression. "Oh, no. It's fine, Yagi-sensei." "Really?" Sheepishly rubbing the back of his head, he admitted, "I doubt we would have kept up the act long anyway. It's probably best not to lie. Just tell them that All Might assisted in training you as a favor to Nedzu." Both Midoriya and Yagi nearly jumped out of their skins, Yagi evenly hacking up some blood as Aizawa appeared out of nowhere in the corner of the lounge, burritoed in his hideous yellow sleeping bag. Sighing heavily, he drawled, "I know I trained you better than that with situational awareness, problem child." "Yes, sensei." Midoriya stuttered out as he patted Yagi's back, the latter wiping his mouth from the blood splatters. "Sorry, I got lost in thought. Don't make a habit of it, or else I'm going to run you through the gauntlet again." Please no." Chuckling, Aizawa took pity on the boy and moved back to the original issue. "Your quirk has similar aspects to All Might's. It's only natural to ask him to mentor you." Shrugging before rolling to face away from them, he adds, "It also can be an excuse as to why he's teaching this year. It inspired him to teach the next generation, or whatever the hell his PR person would write." "That could work," Midoriya muttered, eyes narrowing as he stared at the ground. "This would allow us to more easily interact without having to hide from people. Would also assist with the excuses his PR team will need following the announcement tonight of you joining the faculty, and maybe dash." Yagi cleared his throat, startling the teenager from his train of thought. "My boy, we should probably discuss this later. We have a class to teach dash." "I nearly forgot," the greenette shouted, snatching the case up off the floor. "I'm heading to change in the teacher's locker room. I'll meet you on the training grounds." And before All Might could stop him, Izuku was out the door in a blur of green lightning, leaving his mentors staring after him as he weakly called out, "You grabbed the wrong case." A snort sounded from the corner. "Which case did he grab?" Carefully picking up the case left behind, he replied, "He grabbed his new stealth suit." "Is that going to be a problem?" Let's just say it's a bit more intimidating than his day costume." Midori Protection Squad. Kaminari, okay, tell me I didn't imagine that. Ashido, did the #1 hero actually call him by his first name? Zero, yo, I'm kind of freaking out. Tsuyu, that was very unexpected, Karo. Bakugo, who the F added me back to this sheethole? Kaminari, wow, someone is testy. Bakugo, you wanna die, Pikachu? Ida, everyone, please refrain from using your phones during class time. Uraraka, Dida, you are my friend and I respect you. Uraraka, but let us have our mental breakdowns. Ashido, All Might. Ashido, freaking All Might. Ashido, just called Midoriya, my boy. Ashido, why aren't more people freaking out? Jairu, oh, we are freaking out. Jairu, we are just also freaking out about the fact that we have to get to the training grounds. Jairu, that no one explained how to get to. Ashido, oh shit. Kaminari, Zero, Kirishima, we could ask for directions. Todoroki, I just asked a passing second year. Sato, and? Todoroki, he asked which training grounds. Todoroki, apparently there are multiple. Toru, by multiple you mean like 3 or 4. Todoroki, apparently 27. Todoroki, he laughed and told me, maybe you will find the place before you graduate. Todoroki, I don't understand how that was funny. Jairu, this just in, All Might lost his entire class of first years only 10 minutes into their first heroics class. Kaminari, at least we can tell Aizawa that it's not our fault. Yaoyorozu, do you all do realize that we are in a group chat with Midoriya and Aizawa-sensei, correct? Ishido, we're saved. Shiro, who's gonna be the one to rat on All Might's screw up to Aizawa? Ishido, nodded. Kaminari, nodded. Kirishima, nodded. Bakugu, for FS sakes, someone just text the DMN nerd and then Hobo-sensei doesn't have to FANG know that All Might F'd up. Uraraka, wow, you actually are capable of rational thought. Bakugu, okay you wanna geo round cheeks? Uraraka, and you actually finished a sentence without swearing. Color me impressed. Kaminari, someone might die today and I feel like it's going to be whatever idiot gets caught in the crossfire of those two. Jair, so you? Kaminari, okay OWB? Oh I am so sorry everyone. Midoriya called out as he rounded the corner. It completely slipped our minds to tell you all where the training rounds were dash. Senpai. He froze like a deer caught in the headlights, blinking owlishly at the 18 pairs of eyes staring at him with a range of confusion to terror. Huh. With wide eyes and flushed cheeks, Uraraka steps forward and clears her throat. Is this your hero costume? Glancing down, he jolted, remembering what he was wearing. Oh, well, kind of. Scratching his cheek with a nervous smile, he explained, it's my stealth suit. Or at least, I'm assuming it is. I think I grabbed the wrong case from All Might. Sue blinked. It certainly is intimidating, Karo. That was an understatement. The hooded jumpsuit itself was primarily black, only accentuated with the occasional dark green paneling along the sides and the arms as well as the dark, blood-red gear bags on his hips. Strategically placed armor was decked out along his torso and thighs, while versions of his old braces were fastened on the length of his arms and legs, the dark gunmetal color glinting slightly in the light. All of the gear was more solid-looking with sharper edges, even his steel-reinforced boots and his signature filtration mask that hung loosely around his neck. Considering that they had never seen his limelight outfit before for reference, this was probably one hell of an impression. Shifting on his feet, he added, it's supposed to be intimidating that this suit is meant for underground heroics work. I want to dabble in that and limelight. Before anyone could ask any more questions, Todoroki interjected. Shouldn't we get to our lesson? With a startled yelp, Midoriya spun around and swiftly began to head out down the hall, calling out behind him. Let's hurry. All Might may not be as strict as Aizawa, but we are definitely late. Most of the class reacted on a delay, staring in stunned silence as a handful of members darted off after Midoriya. Seeing the greenet round the corner followed closely by Todoroki, Uraraka, Yaoyorozu, and a few others trailing along, the rest finally seemed to snap out of their stupor. Wait! They all bolted down the hall in a mad dash. Senpai! Wait for us! In his haste to get everyone to their lesson, Midoriya had not quite paid attention to the other students' costumes, his mind frantically hoping that Aizawa does not find out that All Might nearly F'd up his first lesson within the first 10 minutes of class. So, safe to say that when Yaoyorozu caught up to him and attempted to make small talk, his brain took a moment to process exactly what he was seeing. Whatever she was saying was not quite computing in his head, with him just nodding and making small comments as she spoke, his brain just screaming at him. It only got worse when Uraraka chimed in for the conversation, and he got to see her costume as well. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Did you guys design your costumes? Both girls blinked in surprise before becoming sheepish. With a startled laugh, Uraraka tried to put on a cheerful smile. I wasn't really sure what to put down, so I just explained my quirk and wrote that I liked space-themed things. The costume company did the rest. Tugging nervously at her wrist, she mumbled, "It's a little tight." He bit back a growl as his eyes fell to her shoes. And those heels aren't exactly practical. She grimaced. Yeah, I nearly rolled my ankle in the locker room earlier. My costume is a bit different than I expected, Yaoyorozu hesitantly replies with a sigh. I did the same as Uraraka. I told them my quirk, but instead of space I just mentioned I liked the color red. I know I need exposed skin for my quirk, but still. Midoriya tried his best to rein in his thoughts to keep the girl from being uncomfortable. Did they offer any alternative options? They should have had the budget for variations on the jumpsuits. With a tinge of bitterness in his tone, he adds, that includes protective armor. Both girls hesitantly shook their heads no. Well, it's a good thing you guys get to submit costume change ideas tomorrow, Midoriya chirps in a tone that is a bit too chipper. And we will spend homeroom discussing design options. Yaoyorozu certainly seemed relieved. So, that's going to be our lesson tomorrow? It will be now. Neither girl knew how to respond to his ominous tone. As Aizawa spots the class finally entering the control room for the training exercise, he begins to wonder if seeing that eerie smile on his problem child's face was going to be a common occurrence this year. At least this time he wasn't dragging a student in by the scruff of his neck, but the look paired with his stealth suit design made even himself uncomfortable, not to mention the rest of the class. From beside him, he could literally hear All Might gulp. Before he could think to question it, Izuku met his gaze, his face flashing with a look that said, "Trust me," before the boy plastered that god-forsaken smile back on his face. Spinning on his heel and clapping his hands together, the class as a whole nearly jumped out of their skin at the sudden announcement from the usually meek boy. Just an announcement before All Might starts our lesson, the boy chirped. Today is a trial run for your costumes. Think about the pros and cons, and make a mental list, and possibly a physical list once you are done with the exercise, of any and all changes you want from your suit, even if you aren't sure it's possible. We will be spending homeroom going over the pros and cons of your suits, while Aizawa and I also make suggestions. Aizawa lifted a brow. Oh, so is that the lesson plan for tomorrow? Izuku's head snapped towards him, still that DMN eerie smile planted on his face. It is now. Well, alright then. That you heard your senpai. Make those lists. Shaking his head, he muttered. He probably already has like 5 lists himself. I have 7. I'm not awake enough for this. The exercise had not even started yet, and he could feel the headache coming on. He knew the kid meant well, but Aizawa should have known what he was getting himself into. Izuku was incredibly passionate about many things, and he should have known how quickly the boy would grow protective of their class. Though, judging by his first glance at the costume designs in front of him, he could understand why. What the F was the costuming company thinking? Deciding to get the class moving, Aizawa turned his attention towards the one who was actually supposed to be teaching the class right now. Get started already. I'm missing my afternoon nap for this. All Might jumped slightly at the harsh tone thrown at him. He yanks flashcards out of nowhere as he nervously laughs, commenting, "You technically don't have to be here right now." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "But we certainly appreciate having you. Now, on to the lesson, young heroes." The lesson seemed simple enough. A basic objective retrieval mission with a heroes versus villains twist on top. Nothing too fancy, and no logical ruses thrown into the mix. At least, officially. The test was really more of a way to observe the class and decipher who was better at strategic thinking and teamwork rather than see who was the strongest. None of the students knew it yet, but losing still left room for a good score so long as they made use of their planning time and valued their partner. Izuku's mind drifted back to his first practical heroics lesson. It had been just him and Aizawa, with All Might not officially a teacher yet at the time. The fact that it was just the two of them left them with the only option being him versus his sensei. Closed quarters and the fact that he was fighting Eraserhead meant that it was basically a quirkless brawl. Also, with only the two of them, it allowed them to run the simulation multiple times as both the hero and the villain. It bothered him for a while after that he only won the villain fights. Shaking his head, he tuned back into All Might as he just finished choosing the random teams of 2. Before he could start with the matchups, However, Ida moved an arm in the air and chimed in. Sensei, what are we going to do about the fact that there is an odd number of teams? All Might stuttered, clearly having not thought that through, while Aizawa sent a meaningful look Izuku's way. It took just a second of eye contact for him to realize the man's idea. Stepping up towards his mentor and sensei, he turned to the class with a bright smile. I can fight one of the teams, but why is everyone looking at me like that? Most of the class had some variation of a look of terror and horror at the idea of fighting him. Except for Todoroki, who nodded in acceptance, and Kaken who reacted just like Kaken. Let me at the shitty nerd. Bakugu shouted, shoving to the front of the crowd. I can take him. Bakugu! Ida interjected. This is supposed to be random selection. Part of Izuku believed that Ida was saying this out of his love and dedication to rules and order, but Ida had looked very pale when Izuku offered to fight and the poor soul was Bakugu's partner. Attention turned to All Might who seemed to be pondering what to do while Bakugu muttered obscenities in the background. It would not be fair to only allow one group to fight against young Izuku. That he used his first name again. Someone mumbled from the back of the class. Clapping his hands together, All Might shouted, I know just the thing. Planting his hands on his hips and proudly grinning towards the class, he announces, young Izuku shall simply be the villain facing each team. That way you all get your chance to face him. Why do you all look so pale? Aizawa let out a snort of amusement. This isn't exactly a fair fight. I'm sure young Izuku can handle himself just fine. That is not what I meant. Uraraka, with a nervous smile, stepped forward to speak. All Might Sensei. I think our concern is mostly about the fact that Midoriya-senpai has more combat experience with his quirk than us. And the fact that his quirk in general is freaking mental, Jiraiya added, several heads nodding in agreement. The hero blinked. Oh, yes well. His mind flashed back to his first lesson, and an idea popped into his head. Taking a breath, Izuku offered them all another bright smile. So, it's just my quirk that's making you all nervous? At the flurry of nods, he lets his smile widen. Well, that's an easy fix. He glanced at Aizawa, watching the feral grin grow on the man's face as he buried it in his capture weapon. I will just fight quirkless. The room fell silent. No one seemed sure about what to say. While, yes, they did not want to go against their OP senpai with his quirk, fighting him 2 versus 1 without a quirk just seemed unfair. Judging by the glances thrown around the room, Yaoyorozu realized that everyone else seemed to agree with the sentiment. No effing way. Well, most everyone. Storming to the front of the group, Bakugu practically seethed as he jabbed a finger at Midoriya. I don't need no FING handicap. I can beat you even with that shitty but quirk of yours. She could feel the despair in Ida's groan as his partner practically dug their grave. Midoriya seemed uneasy at Bakugu's sudden approach, obviously uncomfortable over the blonde's seemingly endless rage, but he held firm, smiling nervously. It's only for this lesson, Kaken. Bakugu moved to protest, but then Midoriya interjected. How about this? If you and Ida win your round, I will spar you one-on-one with quirks during the next sparring lesson? That certainly caught them off guard. Even Bakugu shouted out a confused, Their senpai simply offered a warm smile. That way you can have a match to beat me without a partner. A match where the end result would be a possibility of you winning completely on your own, where no one could say you had help. His head tilted ever so slightly, the warm smile melting into a blinding one that threw everyone off. Is that okay, Kaken? All eyes were trained on their senpai and Bakugu at that moment, but for her eyes were caught briefly on their sensei standing just a few feet behind the pair. And if she had learned anything in the past 2 days, that look promised that something was about to go down. Still, all the others were none the wiser. Bakugu slowly let a grin spread across his face, an almost feral look in his eyes as he loudly declared, Prepare to die, Deku. And thus, they were all sent off to scatter with their partners, expected to plan till they were called for their turn. And Yaoyorozu wasted no time dragging Uraraka off to a far corner to plot. They were all about to go to war, and her gut told her that even a quirkless Izuku Midoriya would be a beast that none of them would ever have expected. I still think the class should get to watch each of the battles, Izuku commented as he stretched at the entrance to the base. They need to learn. That would give them too big of an advantage seeing you fight, problem child, Aizawa replied smoothly, pulling a pair of wristlets out of his pocket and holding them towards Izuku. They can watch the remaining battles after their rounds and will see them all during the review session. Izuku calmly took the wristlets, clipping them in place and pressing the button on the side to turn them on with a satisfied hum. You mean it would ruin the surprise and make the playbacks less funny for you? His mentor simply shrugged. They will learn this lesson one way or another. Don't ever underestimate your opponent. He pulled a juice pouch out of only God knows where and practically drained it in one go. Besides, no class of mine is going to survive the year without being able to grasp close hand-to-hand combat and stealth. Consider it a wake-up call. Izuku let out a snort. One of your logical ruses? The man scowled. Don't you have a bomb to hide? Aye, sir, his student chirped before jogging off towards the building. Time to get into character. Please don't make me have to send anyone to Hound Dog today. A distant voice shouted, No promises. That I should have just stayed in the teacher's lounge. Uraraka had never felt more pumped in her life. When Midoriya initially announced he would fight them quirkless, she felt almost a little bad. They were handicapping him against a group of students who several had very powerful quirks. On top of that, he would have to fight them all consecutively. It hardly seemed fair. But then her partner all but dragged her away from the others and bluntly stated, Aizawa-sensei was grinning the whole time Izuku suggested fighting quirkless. Uraraka still insists that she might have seen her life flash before her eyes. Thankfully, her partner was brilliant. Part of her felt bad that she was relying so much on the other girl's strategy, but seeing how much the girl lit up the more they planned and the more Uraraka encouraged her, she did not regret it. She did, however, intend to have the girl teach her some basic strategy tactics at a later date. Their plan consisted mostly of the two splitting up after over-preparing themselves for an encounter with Midoriya. The name of the game was just Evade or Distract. While both could possibly take him down and capture him, Yaoyorozu, who now insisted that she call her Momo, pointed out that the boy had far greater training than either of them and that his sensei was Aizawa, a man with the quirk erasure. In essence, Izuku likely was as terrifying fighting quirkless as he was with his quirk. So, they simply needed to avoid him at all costs, if possible. And, if what is likely inevitable happens and one of them happens to encounter their senpai, they need to distract him long enough for the other to get to the bomb. With a simple system of tapping the comms to indicate whether they had seen him, were engaging him, or if they had eye contact on the target, the two girls split up as soon as the buzzer went off. Momo readied her grappling hook, shooting it up towards the highest window and after having Uraraka use her quirk on her, hit the button to pull her up. Once she was sure that her partner was safely through the window, Uraraka released her quirk and headed off through the main entrance. Their plan involved her working her way up while Momo worked her way down, either one finding the bomb or they meet in the middle. Either way, one was likely to encounter Midoriya before the other, and so long as they were not immediately captured, they could warn the other who could drop the stealth act and quickly secure the bomb. The fact that Midoriya was on his own certainly played in their favor. He could not be in two places at once, so they could hopefully divide and conquer. The downside was that they had significantly less experience and essentially were throwing themselves into this fight blind. The whole plan was a risk, but with the time constraints and the fact that even together they might not beat him, the idea of sacrificing one to slow him down seemed to be their best option. Keeping close to the wall, Uraraka carefully glanced around the corner of the second-floor entrance. She had cleared the first fairly quickly, but based on the map they had been provided, the second floor was less of an open layout and provided more potential ambush points for Midoriya to pop out of. She had not heard from Momo yet, so she pressed on, fingers tightening carefully on her weapon as to not activate her quirk. About halfway through the floor, however, she felt her stomach clench, and without thinking, she dropped to the floor, just narrowly missing being grabbed from behind. Without really thinking, she jabbed her weapon behind her blindly and heard a loud yelp of shock as she tapped her communicator, letting Momo know that she was engaging. Midoriya had jumped back away from her, and while she could barely see his eyes under his suit's hood, he yelled, "Is that a cattle prod?" Uraraka grinned victoriously. Momo really is a great partner. That's incredible, he muttered under his breath. And you noticed me so easily. Could your quirk make you sensitive to changes in air pressure? Or, he suddenly jolted, seeming to remember where he was. Analyze later, bad guy mode now. And then he dropped into a crouch, and Uraraka let out an audible gulp as his face grew serious. Oh shit. I have never been more terrified in my life. Midoriya had the decency to look sheepish as he carried her down the stairs, piggyback style. You held your own really well though. Uraraka would normally be embarrassed over her current predicament, but she could not bring herself to care. Between her exhaustion at having to dodge him for a solid 5 minutes that felt way longer than 5 freaking minutes and her throbbing ankle from where he swiped her feet out from under her just as their win was announced, she decided she earned this piggyback ride. And she was dead if she was not going to enjoy it. Momo came jogging out of the building, catching up quickly. Uraraka, are you alright? I'm fine, just twisted my ankle last minute, she chirped back. Midoriya-kun was right about the heels. I'm going to have them removed from the suit. He is being a gentleman and helping me back to Recovery Girl. You both did really well, he chimed in, his smile beaming and impossibly too bright for someone dressed in such intimidating gear and had just kicked her but a couple minutes ago. The plan you made was super effective, and you held out really well for having no combat experience, Uraraka. I was struggling trying to find an opening to attack you in that narrow hallway and not be hit by your quirk. Her face suddenly felt very warm at the praise, and she struggled to try and form words that weren't flustered squeaks. Thankfully, she was spared by Recovery Girl's approach. Some gentle chastisement about being more careful during class exercises and a quick kiss to the cheek, and her ankle was back to normal, though she was a bit tired herself. Now, run along, dears, Recovery Girl explained before looking up at Midoriya with a pointed look. This boy has one last pair of students to traumatize. With a pout, their senpai replies, I didn't traumatize them. You clearly need to watch the tapes from the earlier groups, came the snippish comeback, her tone offering no room for arguing. Now, hurry along, I don't have all day. Alright, I'm going. Heading to jog off, Midoriya throws them a bright smile over his shoulder. Talk to you both later. We have to talk about your quirks later. They're both so amazing. Neither girl had a chance to reply before he darted off, leaving them both blushing from the praise while Recovery Girl chuckled under her breath. The pair was immediately bombarded by classmates as they entered the waiting room. Hey you two. How did your test go? Kirishima cheerfully asked, jogging across the room towards them. Dang, you guys look in better shape than the rest of us coming back, Siro adds. Midoriya really doesn't hold back. Uraraka chuckled at that. Yeah, fighting him was mildly terrifying. He's super intimidating when he focuses. Swept my feet right out from under me with a super cool kick. Kaminari laughed at that. He did the same to me. Wrapped capture tape around my wrists before I could even fully use my quirk. Though the mild shocks I did manage didn't seem to affect him, apparently his suit is mildly shock resistant. And the metal is apparently some weird alloy that resists corrosion, Mina chimed in, a mixture of glum but intrigued. He certainly has thought his suit through, Momo chimed in thoughtfully. He had designed it before even meeting us, yet it still gave him an advantage against several quirks. I'm interested as to what insights he'll have for us tomorrow during costume discussions. He seems prepared for any type of quirk. Maybe not any, Uraraka says with a rueful smile. Mine would have been great to use against him, but I couldn't even land a touch on him with my quirk. I'm lucky Momo found the bomb when she did. Everyone in the room went quiet and just stared at her. Kaminari broke the silence. Wait, you found your bomb? You guys actually won. That made her frown. Is it that hard to believe that we won? He didn't mean it like that, Jiraiya supplied, breaking away from her conversation with Shuji and Tokoyami. He means, you two are the only ones so far that have actually won. What? Momo looked just as shocked as she did. He beat all of you? Tokoyami nodded, with Dark Shadow looking like she was pouting behind him. He deduced most of our weaknesses and made short work of our groups. It is rather commendable how well you two did. Uraraka was at a loss, trying to process. She just assumed that the others had won as well. The fact that everyone else lost made her conflicted. Part of her was elated at the idea of doing so well compared to her classmates, but another part of her was concerned. He didn't hold back on us, right? Shaken from her thoughts, Ojiro chimed in. Depending on how the last group does, you two might be the only ones to win today. Momo's brows scrunched together. Who is in the last group again? Before anyone could answer, a distant boom shook the complex violently, jarring all of them into defensive stances before they all seemed to simultaneously realize what happened. Bakugu. Hellchat. Cat Dad, the problem child has earned 3 days of shaming effective immediately. Problem child, that is excessive. Cat Dad, then maybe you should have been more careful during the lesson. Problem child, but it was Kakin. Problem child, he doesn't do careful. All Dad, I do not think today was that bad. Louded, that is a bit much show. Bloodbag, yeah, the kid's been so good lately, what on earth did he do to earn 3 whole days? Whined, aw, has my favorite nephew been naughty today? Cat Dad, earlier, Izuku broke his arm, 3 ribs, and dislocated both of his opponent's arms during class today. Loud Dad at Problem Child shame. Whinant, at Problem Child shame. Bloodbag, at Problem Child shame. Rootin' Tootin', sorry kid. Rootin' Tootin', at Problem Child shame. Spook, at Problem Child shame. Brick, at Problem Child shame. Diglett, at Problem Child shame. All Dad, I am deeply sorry, young Izuku. All Dad at Problem Child shame. Problem Child, you Brutus? All Dad, Izuku. Problem Child, betrayal. Rat Satan, at Problem Child shame. Problem Child, nu. Problem Child, Nedzu not you too. Rat Satan, as much as I applaud your efforts today with 1A, I must abide by the rules of shaming. Problem Child, but the dislocations were a valid strategy against Kakin's quirk. Granny, we are more concerned about you breaking your bones. Granny, again. Problem Child, I plead the 5th. Diglett, we are in Japan? Problem Child, I plead the 5th. Cat Dad, stop complaining. This is your own fault. Problem Child, I'm revoking your dad privileges. Cat Dad, fine then, I'm returning the signed Mirko merch I got you. Problem Child, sheet wait. Louded, gasp. Diglett, wait seriously? He actually knows swear words? Whynt, perhaps he needs more than 3 days of shaming? Problem Child, I'm being bullied. All Dad, young Midoriya. Swearing is unbecoming of a young hero. Rootin' Tootin', says the man who swears in English regularly. All Dad, I plead the 5th. Class 1A chat. Midoriya at everyone hello class. Great job during the heroics class today. We will go over everyone's performance tomorrow during homeroom, as well as have everyone sign up for time slots to come discuss costume changes and improvements with me throughout the day. Midoriya, make sure to have notes on your costumes because I will as well. Midoriya, and I have notes that are not optional. Tokoyami, ominous. Uraraka, why is a smiley face so intimidating? Midoriya, don't worry. I just plan to speak to Nedzu about our outsourced costume contracts. Midoriya, and about how to fast-track a lawsuit. Midoriya, everything will be fine. Kaminari, fear. Midoriya, in other news, I need to make some changes to the group chat. Sato, what kind of changes? Izuku Midoriya has changed the chat name to Hellspawn Chat. Sato, Dado. Kaminari, PFFFT. Ashido, oh wow, wasn't expecting that from Senpai. Yairozu, oh my. Siro, kind of accurate. Ida, Midoriya. That is highly inappropriate. Aizawa, problem child. Midoriya, yes? Aizawa, what are you doing? Midoriya, nothing. Izuku Midoriya has revoked Shoyuta Aizawa's admin privileges. Kirishima, Izuku Midoriya has changed nickname privileges to admin only. Kaminari, Aizawa, problem child. Aizawa, don't you dare. Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya changed his nickname to Problem Child. Toru, okay, that's not too bad. Izuku Midoriya changed Shoyuta Aizawa's nickname to Buttface. Zero at Toru, you just had to jinx it. Bakugu, haha. Ashido, oh my god, I'm wheezing. Zero, Diamen Senpai. Tokoyami, what a mad banquet of darkness. Buttface. Buttface, Izuku Midoriya. Problem Child, I don't think I thought this through. Buttface, run. Problem Child. Kirishima, should we be concerned? Bakugu, nah. Zero, dude, that's cold. Uraraka, is anyone still at school that can check on him? Todoroki, I am still here. Todoroki, I can hear screaming down the hall. Should I alert the teachers? Ashido, yes? Todoroki, I informed Vlad King. Todoroki, he stared down the hallway towards the screaming and muttered, it's too early for this sheet, before turning around and walking in the opposite direction. Todoroki, I do not understand. It is past 4 in the afternoon. Is he nocturnal? Kaminari, someone have Samenta-sensei make senpai a gravestone cause RIP. I am disappointed in you. Sir, please, it was a mistake. The only mistake was the expectations I had for you. Sensei, I promise, it won't happen again. I trusted you. Aizawa shouted, shoving himself up out of his chair and slamming his hands on his desk, causing everyone in the room to shrink. I trusted in you, and you broke that trust. Izuku shrunk, visible tears in his eyes as he pleaded with the man. Please, I swear I will do better. It's too late for that. His voice dropped into a resigned, almost broken sound. Far too late. Pulling open a drawer, Aizawa reached in and dragged out what looked to be a sign, and everyone watched as Izuku visibly paled at the sight. No. Sir, please, anything but that. Dropping to his knees, hands clasped in front of him, he begged, it won't happen again, just give me another chance. No more chances. Dragging himself to his feet, ignoring the pleading of his star student, Aizawa made his way to the wall, taping up the sign as Izuku cried out a dramatic wail, throwing himself on the ground with a defeated groan. What the F-? Bakugu whispered as everyone stared in stunned silence at the sign in question. Number of days since Midoriya broke a bone. 76. They all watched as Aizawa pulled a marker out of somewhere, erasing the 76 and drawing a huge and emphatic 0. Turning around with a bored expression, though some would imagine a hint of amusement glinting in his eyes, he drawled out, shame. At that, Izuku shot up to a seated position in the middle of the floor, glaring daggers at the man. F you. Everyone promptly lost it. After allowing a few minutes of chaos, Aizawa turned his gaze on the class, activating his quirk and ordering, quiet down and sit. Everyone quickly moved to behave, scurrying to their seats while Izuku dragged himself up off the floor to scurry off towards the wall. Turning his gaze towards the boy, he bluntly asked, did you manage to get the presentation about yesterday's exercise ready? Perking up, Izuku darted towards his bag in the back of the room and pulled out his laptop. Just let me get it queued up. Nodding, Aizawa moved to address the class. We are going to be reviewing the footage of each battle today, watching the losing teams and the winning teams. Or unfortunately, the winning team. Only one team passed the trials yesterday. He gave both Yaoyorozu and Uraraka a pointed nod, noticing Bakko huffing in the corner, arms crossed as he stared out the window. We will all be looking for what was done well and what could be improved on. Izuku, are you ready? He noticed that Izuku was giving his laptop a few panicked looks as he glanced up at the teacher. Maybe we should get new files from Nedzu. I don't think I edited these properly. Can they still play? Aizawa asked as he grabbed a remote from his desk and pressed a button, allowing the projector and screen to lower from the ceiling. Well, yes, but I'm sure they will be fine, Problem Child. Hesitantly moving to hook up the projector and speakers to his device while Aizawa flipped off the room lights, Izuku tried again. I don't think this is a good idea. Midoriya. His eyes narrowed as his brow twitched. Just play the clips. The projector came to life, showing an empty hallway and a blur could be seen appearing on the screen, only to watch the figure trip over some unseen obstacle, fly forward with a strangled yelp, and slam into a wall, promptly followed by "Hollaback Girl" blaring over the speakers, the scene rewinding and replaying the collision with the wall in time to the beat of the song. Everyone burst into laughter, Ida sinking into his seat with a groan while Bakugo muttered, "So that's how he took out glasses?" Aizawa leveled Izuku with a "what in the hell" face, only for Izuku to laugh nervously and say, "I was too low on stamina for Recovery Girl to fully heal me, so she sent me home with pain meds, and you know how I react on those." Their teacher suddenly looked horrified as he replied, "Oh God, that explains so much." And that is how the class learned that Izuku and pain medication was a terrifying combination. The rest of the video clips went about as well as Ida's. Half the memes were old and outdated and things that no one in the class understood, though the clip of Izuku snatching Ciro's tape out of midair and then using it to WHP the boy out a window with a loud "Pliti" was fairly well understood by the class as whole. "I feel like we are being both hazed and roasted," Kaminari said with a wince as the Bakugo on the screen launched himself at Izuku, only for the greenette to dodge and catch him by the scruff of the neck. The screen paused, zooming in on Bakugo's momentary look of panic as the words, "I'm in danger," played, only for the scene to continue as their senpai full body flipped the angry blonde face first into the ground. Aizawa let out an almost pained groan as he slowly sunk down to the floor. Why did I think keeping the problem child around for another year would be a good idea? "I'm not that bad," Izuku protested weakly, only to have to hold back a snort as the screen showed him bribing Dark Shadow with an apple as guitar music began to play, the demonic quirk then turning on Tokoyami, who I had an "oh shit" look on his face as the guitar picked up. The screen froze as the shadow lunged at the panicking user, a to be continued flashing on the screen. Cut to tied-up Tokoyami with his quirk happily munching on his Judas apple. "What demonic forces did you summon to earn the knowledge of Dark Shadow's weakness?" the boy in question asked, slumping in his seat with a bitter look towards his quirk, who at least looked a bit sheepish, though not remorseful. Izuku scratched his head with an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I heard him pestering you for one yesterday in between the tests. I thought it was worth a shot." "But seriously," Mina shouted, slamming down her hands on her desk. "You knew weaknesses for all of us. How?" Aizawa finally straightened up in his chair. "Izuku took advantage of his time during the quirk assessment yesterday to analyze your quirks." Silence. Then several shouts and cries erupted in the room, prompting the man to activate his quirk. Quietly, Hakigure muttered, "So that's what the notebook was for?" Bakugo let out a groan, slamming his face into the desk. "The goddamn nerd is still writing those?" Kirishima chimed in with a, "What do you mean still?" "Deku's been analyzing quirks since we were FING toddlers." Spinning in his chair, he narrowed his eyes at the boy in question. "He probably has multiple strategies on how to take us all out." "What?" Izuku looked bashful. "It's a hobby of mine. One that earned you personal analysis classes with Nedzu," Aizawa chimed in. "Izuku is above par even compared to professional quirk analysts. The fact that any of you won against him having never fought before is a miracle." "Then what was the point of letting us fight him?" Ojiro asked incredulously. "To teach you all a lesson." Aizawa locked eyes with his problem child. "Never underestimate your opponent. Because even without a quirk." Izuku gave a small smile. It could be the difference between life and death. No one knew how to respond to that. Clapping his hands together as the clips finally came to an end, Izuku brightly chirped, "All right, so what did we learn?" "We learned that you are a beast," Kaminari chimed in with several nods from his classmates. "And Yamamo is a goddess." Both in question blushed brightly at the praise while Aizawa rolled his eyes. "Beyond the obvious, Kaminari. Now, let's break down the main difference between the winning team and the losing teams." Standing from his chair and striding towards the whiteboard, he quickly and neatly wrote out a word before underlining it. "Strategy." Half an hour of lecture later, and most of the class was well and thoroughly chastised for their strategy versus Yaoyorozu and Uraraka's. Meaning, they had no strategy versus the girls actually thinking it out. Honestly, with the numbers and the limited amount of floors, The divide and conquer strategy possibly could have earned several of you wins during this venture, seeing as how Izuku cannot be in more than one place, Aizawa concluded, giving them all disappointed stares. But you all decided to brute force your way to victory, ignoring your opponent's experience in favor of thinking that he was helpless without a quirk. I will not tolerate that line of thinking in my class. Now, I will say that usually, I will not tolerate strategies that rely on the possibility of sacrificing a teammate, he adds pointedly, giving the girls a look. But given the circumstances, that was likely the only way to win, so I will allow it. Just do not make a habit of it in the future. I doubt we will put you at these type of odds anytime soon anyway. Giving Izuku a pointed look, Aizawa went to collapse back at his desk. Izuku, you're up. Right? He chirped, moving to stand at the front with a beaming smile. Now, I have a schedule here for you all to sign up for time slots to discuss your costumes. Please pick something during your free PRDS, not your regular classes. There should be enough slots, but we can work something out if need be. And if we don't want your FNG advice, Deku? The sickly sweet smile Izuku gave in response was enough to make even Bakugo slump in his seat. Then you will be banned from heroics lessons until the discussion is had. And, according to Nedzu, multiple unexcused absences can result in your termination from the heroics course. We wouldn't want that, right, Kakin? Goddammit, fine, you DMN nerd. Glad you see it my way. Uraraka. Izuku chirped happily, waving the girl into the small office he had. He was still surprised that Nedzu had given him an office, but the principal insisted that if the boy accepted the TA position that he had to have his own office. Not that he was complaining, the space was cozy, and he often found himself here when he needed to do homework or paperwork. Watching the girl glance around at the various hero merch he had scattered around the space, primarily the All Might merch, he could not help but blush at the amused smirk on her face. You know, it's kind of calming knowing that under all that training, you're just a fanboy at heart. Ducking his head, he let out a soft sigh. Yet it's still a bit surreal for me that I get to work among my idols. 2 years ago, I was just a quirkless fanboy with dreams of being a hero, and now I'm still a fanboy, and All Might and the other teachers tease from time to time about it, but they are also the ones who sneak their new merch into my office and backpack to surprise me. It's a lot. Giving a bright smile, Uraraka finally moved to settle into the chair across from her senpai. Just think, soon you will be the one with merch and you can sneak it to unsuspecting fanboys. Izuku let out a distressed squawk, pouting as the girl starts to laugh at him. Huffing, he moves to grab a file folder with her name on it. Let's not focus on me right now. We're here to discuss your costume. Pushing back her giggles and growing a tad more serious, Uraraka sheepishly replies, "Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the heels or how tight it is. I was going to recommend removing those anyway," he offered with a smile. "So I'm glad we're on the same page." Opening the file, he pulls out a few sketches to hold out to her. She was immediately impressed by the quality of the sketch, but Izuku was rambling before she could tell him so. I kind of took the liberty of sketching out a few ideas. Staying along the space theme, I was thinking boots similar to 13s would be perfect, though we can reconstruct the soles to be more comfortable for running since 13s aren't. Also, I have a few ideas that either work off of your old design or one that completely overhauls it. Uraraka immediately honed in on the overhauled design. The aviator-style jacket called out to her, though he drew out options. A version that was normal length or one that was cropped with short sleeves. It went over what looked like an aviation-style flight suit, one that was a bit more tailored with racing stripe decals down the side and a functional-looking utility belt. The suit also had padding in various areas that looked both aesthetically pleasing to the outfit, but also seemed like it would provide more protection in combat. Off to the side of her figure, a pilot's helmet and fingerless gloves were sketched out, but notes next to it suggested letting the UA support department work out the design details for those aspects. "This one," she replied after a few moments of staring, barely even glancing at the others. "When I said space-themed, I meant more like 13. They're my idol, I want to be a rescue hero like them. So the nod to them with the boots would be perfect. But I like that the rest of the suit is better for movement." She glanced up nervously. If I change my mind about parts of it later, is that okay? Of course, he immediately reassured her. Yurarika, trust me when I say that these designs will change drastically over your career. No one keeps the same design as their first year. And if you find yourself not liking something, tell us immediately. UA has more than enough of a budget for this. Smiling sheepishly, he adds, you should see how many suits I've gone through. I've had to add so much support gear to help regulate my quirk. Grabbing her file, he then pulls out a few forms. Now, I'm going to show you how to fill out this form. You don't always have to include a sketch, but it can be helpful, especially for a full overhaul. In the future, you can fill this out whenever you want to make a change, and you don't have to go through me or Aizawa, but never hesitate to ask for help. Now, let's start with color preferences. Now, Ida, your costume. I love how you based it off of your family. The design in and of itself is really noticeable and eye-catching, and it's perfect on an aesthetic standpoint. Though I do have a few suggestions about the functionality of parts, particularly how it disallows you to make sharp turns, such as the incident with the tripwire. Also, have you considered having your glasses prescription built into the helmet? Kirishima, you are an amazing person. Gee, thanks, man. Your outfit concept is great, and I love your dedication to your manly aesthetic. That I'm sensing a but, that there's no way I can let you in the field without a shirt or any armor padding. Hardening quirk or not, that's just asking to get you hit when dequirked, or worse, shot. That I never thought about it that way. And that's completely fine. Now, let's take a look at a few design ideas with Kevlar-infused fabric. Hagakure, what do you mean that the company only gave you gloves and boots? Do you have something to say? Yes, and I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say it. You can be blunt. I can take it. You're sure? Yes. Todoroki, your costume is ugly. Oh. Yamamo. Good, I'm glad you're here. We have a lot to discuss. First off, we are suing the costume company on your behalf. And for a few other students as well. No, you did nothing wrong. They had plenty of budget to offer you different outfits. You should not have been made to wear something that clearly made you uncomfortable. Hagakure too. Quite frankly, those outfits violated several laws. Now, enough of that, Nedzu-sensei is handling them. How familiar are you with the concept of DNA-infused fabric? Kaminari, the other day during the battle trial, you said that you overloaded your brain? Oh yeah, that happens sometimes when I go too high in voltage. It's no big deal dash. Kaminari know that is a big deal. Despite having some resistance from your quirk, that could cause you possible brain damage in the long run. It's not healthy. Oh. I've got a few ideas sketched out that we can have the support department work on with you. They can build something capable of channeling the excess electricity to keep it away from your brain and prevent long-term damage. Also, the possibility of storing it in an extra support item for a weapon backup. Wait, really? They can build something to do that? Yes, of course. I work with the support department a lot for gear to help me maintain my own quirk and prevent me from damaging myself. Also, while I know this is a costume consult, I may have went overboard and devised a list of foods that could help with cognitive brain function and help your brain retain the strain from your quirk a bit better. You did all of this? I want to help you, Kaminari. It's mine and the other teachers' jobs, and we genuinely want to help you with whatever your problem. You just have to ask. That I may have some learning issues that I need help with. Let's talk about that. So, Kaken. Deku. The boy in question simply smiles shyly, looking as if there was some kind of inside joke behind the name. Both remain silent for a beat, with Bakugu slumped down in his chair, clearly wanting to be anywhere but here. Izuku, having decided that he let the silence reign long enough, scooped up the boy's file and handed it over. Bakugu snatched it, flipping it open with a scowl, expecting the boy to have completely redesigned his suit only to find the file empty. What the F-? Izuku shrugged. You're the only one whose costume didn't have any issues. Pulling out the design SBM since that Katsuki had submitted at the start of the term, Izuku pointed out, you thought of most everything. You have armor in key areas, though I would like to see more on the torso, maybe Kevlar fabric. Your gauntlets have built-in wrist supports, your utility belt includes basic first aid, and you even had hearing aids designed to block decibel levels over harmful limits to combat the drawbacks of your quirk. Giving the explosive blonde a near-blinding smile, he chirped, I have no issues with your costume, Kakin. It's fully approved, pending whether you have any requests or not. Slamming his hands on the desk and jumping to his feet, he snapped, Then why the F did I need to come to this stupid meeting? Because I needed to know that you were going to be willing to work with me. The silence hung heavy between the two after that, the angry look slipping off the blonde's face while Izuku tried to stay carefully blank. I want to help you. I know you will be a great hero one day, Kakin. And before you say it, I know you don't need my help. But it's there. Why the F are you offering it? Bakugo snapped, though there was not much bite behind it. You're leaps and bounds ahead of me now, shouldn't you be reveling in your victory? Because this isn't a competition. The smaller boy snapped back, slamming his own hands down on the desk and rising in challenge to the other boy. Because once upon a time, we talked about being heroes, together, and I don't know if that meant anything to you, but it did to me. Bakugo flinched back at the bite in past friend's words, for once being at a loss of what to say. Izuku seemed to have plenty to say, however. I'm not asking to be best friends again. I don't even know if you would accept being friends. But just know that all I want is to help you. Yes, I have more experience, but you are here to get that experience too. All you have to do is accept my help. Silently staring at the boy in front of him, Bakugo found himself at a loss. Accepting help was not something he did. He was supposed to be the best, unbeatable, yet he found himself staring into the face of the boy he used to push down into the dirt, the one who just the day prior beat him without breaking a sweat. Without using a quirk. Glancing away, he clenched his jaw. Yudot said something about Kevlar fabric? The way Deku brightened in front of him was blinding. He didn't feel like he had earned it. Yeah, I have a few samples I can show you. In the privacy of his own mind, he could admit it. Bakugo had some catching up to do. Midori Protection Squad. Ashido, guys. Ashido, guys, can I just say that Midoriya is like infinitely more adorable after today? Ashido, we were talking about costume adjustments and he was so nice and concerned about the fact that they made mine strapless and even drew me out design options? And pulled fabric swatches that he thought were bright and bubbly, like me. He's just so wholesome. Kaminari, I know, right? I cried during my appointment. Like, he was so worried about me being permanently injured by my quirk when I overload because it's apparently not normal, so he drew up all these ideas for support gear. And he even talked to me about classwork? Kaminari, he thinks I might have undiagnosed dyslexia and ADHD. I'm scheduled to be tested for it this week, and he even offered me tutoring. Kurishin, dude, that's so manly of him. Yaoyorozu, he was very kind in the meeting I had with him that he was appalled at the costume the company gave me. Apparently they had DNA-infused fabric options that my quirk could have worked with. It will be so much of a relief to not be so exposed. Jairu, wasn't he also upset about the butt bookshelf? Yaoyorozu, yes, that. It wasn't exactly well planned. He's getting a digital wrist-mounted device that I can use to look up a variety of items' molecular components instead of having to flip through a book for. Hagakure, I'm getting a DNA suit too. He thinks they can make it turn visibility on and off. At the very least, my boots and gloves will do that with reflector panels. Tsuyu, I don't know about the rest of you, but I was just as impressed with the design sketches he did. Ashido, I know, right? He made me look so pretty. Uraraka, he drew 3 different designs for my costume, and I was amazed at all of them. He even remembered me mentioning that 13 was my favorite hero and modeled my new boots after theirs. Bakugo, are you fuckers done gushing over the nerd? Uraraka, remind me why he's in this group again? Bakugo, round cheeks. Uraraka, how about you, Blasty? Zero, I feel like whenever those two finally spar, something's gonna be broken. Jairu, probably Kami. Kaminari, Kaminari, but true. Hellchat. Problem child at loud dad, hey, Is there any way you can send Shinso Hitoshi to see me after the last block PRD today? I'm not sure if he has any obligations after school and I could possibly do it tomorrow, but I have an offer I want to extend to him. Lauded, sure, I can check with him, hold on. Katid, what's this about, kid? Problem child, remember that idea we discussed with Nedzu regarding how rigged the entrance exams are? Katid, this. Carry on. Wa'n't, that was very vague and ominous. Problem child, it's just a program we are thinking about implementing since the commission is run by Quirkist BSTRDS. Blood, I just spat out my drink. Diglett, Aizawa, you are a bad influence on the kid. Katid, what? It's the truth. Wynant, I think he meant the BSTRD part, Shoyuda. Problem child, oh no, I picked that up from All Might. Blood, well then. Granny, Yagi. Lauded, Shinso says he is free. Heads up though, the kid is a bit wary of, well, people. Granny, oh, is the poor dear alright? Loud dad, it's only the second day, but he is very closed off from his classmates. Not to mention that I caught 2 of them harassing him about his quirk. Cat dad, did you deal with them? Rat Satan, the 2 students are currently on suspension with mandatory quirk discrimination classes in order to stay enrolled. Problem child, I will be nice, I promise. I just want to make him an offer. But at Cat Dad and at All Dad, this does mean I won't be available during Heroics lecture today. Aldad, that is quite alright, my boy. I already have my note cards prepared. Cat Dad, I'll sleep in the corner in case he needs backup. Cat Dad, oh, and I nearly forgot. Problem child, oh no. Cat Dad at Problem child, shame. Loud Dad, oh yeah, you still have 2 more days. Loud Dad at Problem child, shame. Wine Ant at Problem child, shame. All Dad at Problem child, shame. Rootin' Tootin' at Problem child, shame. Brick at Problem child, shame. Blood at Problem child, shame. Spook at Problem child, shame. Diglett at Problem child, shame. Rat Satan at Problem child, shame. Problem child, I hate you all. Problem child at Cat Dad, I'm moving out to go live in the woods. All Dad, Izuku, Aizawa, please. Class 1A chat. Problem child, hello at everyone. Quick announcement. I will not be present during Heroics today due to a meeting. I'm not sure how long that meeting will take, so I also will not be available after class today. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, but if the question seems urgent, Aizawa-sensei is still available. Problem child, also, please be kind to All Might. He's still new to teaching, and he's very excited about the lecture he prepared today over rescue procedures. Uraraka, we'll miss you in class. Ida, we as a class will be on our best behavior for All Might. You have nothing to fear. Jairu, saying that is just going to jinx us. Kaminari, I'm sure things will be fine. Jairu, and now it's for certain. Buttface, behave, gremlins, or you're expelled. Buttface. Buttface at Problem child, fix my name before I expel you too. Problem child, yes, sensei. Dadzawa, good. Dadzawa. Dadzawa, goddamn it, Izuku. Zero, you know he does give off dad vibes. Ida, that is inappropriate language, Aizawa-sensei. Ashido, Bakugu has said things that are much more inappropriate. Uraraka, Bakugu's face is inappropriate. Bakugu, you are dead, round cheeks. Kaminari, I am so calling him Dadzawa next time I see him. Dadzawa, don't. 30 minutes later. Class 1A chat. Satu, I heard a muffled cut-off yelp and saw Kaminari being dragged off by a capture weapon. Aizawa-sensei won't hurt him, right? Problem child, Sai probably not. Hagakure, that doesn't help, senpai. Jairu, I told you guys that you were going to jinx us. Problem child, all I wanted was a calm, happy group chat with no threats of murder or bodily harm. Is that too much to ask? Yes. Problem child, hell chat. Problem child at Cat Dad, are you willing to adopt another child? Problem child at Rat Satan, how can I legally murder someone? Blood, what the F? Cat Dad, what happened? Problem child, I am so angry. Problem child, I kept a straight face during the meeting, but I am currently in the teacher's lounge trying to calm down while Shinso is waiting for me in my office. Problem child, I can't let him go back tonight. No way. You have to keep him. I will fight whoever I need to, but he's not going back to those monsters. Just Eno. Cat did deep breaths. Izuku, I'm almost to the teacher's lounge. Everything will be all right. Diglett. Why is Aizawa sprinting through the halls like a madman? Blood. Scroll up. Diglett. Oh sheet. Wynant. What happened? Loud. Show. I'm on my way too. Rat Satan, as am I. Rat Satan. Murder cannot be done legally, but I do have some legal alternatives if this is what I believe it to be. Alded. Oh my boy, is everything alright? Diglett. It's been 10 minutes, what's happening? Cat Dad. So, I'm going to be using my emergency foster license to take legal custody of Shinso. I won't go into detail, but he revealed several issues with his current foster parents to Izuku that are not okay. I need to go talk to the boy about this, but Izuku will be unavailable for a bit due to a minor panic attack. Wynant. Oh sheet, do you need me to come to the lounge or do you all need space? Loud Dad, space is preferable right now. We don't want to overload either of them. I'm sitting with Izuku and Sho is talking to Shinso. Shinso is not taking the news as well as can be expected but is very confused as to why we are so concerned. Cat Dad at all, Dad, can you come and borrow Izuku for a few hours? I need to take Shinso to get his things from his foster parents' home and make a few calls to the detective. I don't think the kid should meet the foster parents. Alded, I will be there shortly. Alded, also my boy, would you like to pick up some Katsudon tonight? Problem Child, yes please. Problem Child at Cat Dad, if I can't legally commit murder, how about punching them in the face? Cat Dad, no, Izuku. Problem Child, worth a shot. Shinso was not used to having people worry about him. He was fine with this. He grew to not expect help from others early on and to drag himself up from the dirt on his own. He did not need any help to achieve his goals. But when his teacher pulled him aside and said that Class 1, as teaching assistant, requested a meeting with him, he could not help the small bloom of hope in his chest. But then he met the TA, and he immediately slammed his guard back up. I'm so glad you agreed to meet me today, Shinso? Blinking slowly, Shinso stared at the green-haired boy sitting across from him who smiled far more brightly than he knew how to handle. The boy could not possibly be older than him, and he could not help but blurt out his first thought. Is this a prank? The boy blinked, then tilted his head in confusion in a way that was far too similar to a puppy. No. He blinked again, and then recognition flashed. Oh, you're confused about my age, aren't you? That just a bit. And then the boy explained. Skipped a grade, second-year student, finished all of the heroics courses and then some, and now the teachers are floundering just to find some way to occupy this beast of a child's time until he turns 18 and can be set loose on the world. Shinso found himself shrinking in on himself, keeping a carefully crafted mask as this golden child, the perfect poster child for a hero school, shifted nervously in his chair while explaining this all. The nervous nature set off red flags in his head, contradicting the accomplishments of the boy wonder. Seeming to not like talking about himself, Izuku soon shifted gears. His face had a false neutrality about it, but his eyes flared in irritation as he spoke. Being quite frank, the exam for the heroics course is sheet. If he had been drinking something, he would have spat it out. Huh, the golden boy can swear. The greenette blinked, then sheepishly scratched his head. I'd have a bit of a temper on certain topics. The fact that heroics favors flashy, destructive quirks is one of them. So many good quirks slip through the cracks. And oh, does that fact sit bitterly in Hitoshi's stomach. I want to fix that, Midoriya declared, determination burning in his eyes. But the board is full of quirkist idiots, and Nedzu is having to wage a very slow war with them, so it will take time. In the meantime, I found a loophole. The sports festival. Shinso blurted it out before he could stop himself and immediately panicked, only to see an approving grin from Izuku. The sports festival. You've done your research. Midoriya happily replies, moving to grab a file off his desk. Aizawa-sensei got into the hero course the same way. Shinso was very aware of this, considering Eraserhead was his idol. However, that is not the loophole I was referring to. Opening the folder and holding it out for Shinso to take, he asked, "How familiar are you with the original vigilante laws?" Shinso could easily say that this was decidedly not how he was planning his day to go. Shifting uncomfortably in the passenger seat of the car, he stared out the window with a grimace on his face. He had a million emotions coursing through him in that moment, but not a single distinct thought about how to react to his current predicament. Glancing at the driver, part of him tried to say that this was just a fever dream. How else could he explain not only being in the vicinity of his hero idol, but also in the man's car? Now if only their destination were better. You really don't have to go through this trouble. A heavy sigh. Trust me, kid, this isn't any trouble. Flipping on the blinker as they turned onto the familiar street, Aizawa drawled, "And there is no way in hell I will sit back and let them treat you like that." Shrugging, Shinso dropped his eyes in his lap. They're going to deny it. Unfortunately for them, the pro replied with a hint of a vindictive edge to his voice. I have a detective with a lie detector quirk on speed dial. Shinso's head snapped up. He's willing to help? Of course, Aizawa replies as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. That's his car parked a couple houses down. And the kid didn't think he could afford to hope, but yes, he could clearly see a man in a trench coat exiting a car not too far away from where their vehicle was being parked. Shinso. His gaze dropped to his lap, and he wondered why the car was shaking so much. Then he realized the car was off, and oh, it's me that's shaking. Shinso, I promise. This will be the last time you ever have to set foot in that house. He let out a bitter, slightly hysteric laugh before he could stop himself. And can you promise that the next foster family will be any better? Silence. And then, the pro carefully sat a hand on his shoulder. Yes, because I won't treat you like that. The implications of that single sentence set in, and Hitoshi didn't know whether to feel overjoyed or numb. In order to get into the heroics course this year, you have to place in the top 3 at the festival, which is not an easy feat without proper training. And, unfortunately, due to UA rules, you cannot be taken on as an apprentice by any of the teachers until after the sports festival, which means you would be competing with 0 training against heroic students who have been receiving training for over a month by that point. Slouching in his chair, Shinso glared at the boy in front of him while tossing the file filled with printouts from the UA rule book onto the desk. I'm well aware of the odds I'm up against. Is there a point to this? Yes, there is. Midoriya carefully shifted through the papers. You know, it's funny how many laws are made and then never adjusted as time goes on and circumstances change. Provisional licenses are now near entirely used for just heroic students, but originally, they were meant for vigilantes prior to them getting full hero licenses. One big issue that occurred were vigilantes stuck in this in-between state with apprentices of their own that were not quite ready for a provisional license. So, the solution? He finally found the page he was looking for and triumphantly handed it to Shinso. People with official provisional licenses were allowed to take on apprentices, so long as 3 fully licensed heroes with teaching licenses signed off. Then he pulled out another form. Principal Nedzu, Aizawa-sensei, and Yamada-sensei were all more than happy to sign off on this. Shinso's hands began to shake. What? UA rules say nothing against TAs being able to take on an apprentice. Midoriya elaborates softly, noticing the lost look in Shinso's eyes. I have a provisional license, and I have plenty of training to at least get you close to par with the other hero students before the festival. All Might is also more than willing to allow you to sit in on and observe the heroics lessons. Why? His throat felt like it was closing up, like he couldn't breathe. Why are you going through all of this for me? Midoriya sat quietly for a minute, seeming to think over his words. Then cautiously he explained. I've had this plan since last year. Nedzu approved, and after the entrance exams were done, he let me go over all the files of those who tried the heroics exam and did not make it in the course to pick my apprentice. You stuck out for a lot of reasons. Slowly, as if not to startle the boy, Izuku opened a drawer on his desk and pulled out a file with Shinso Hitoshi scribbled across the front. Your exam scores were good, and your entrance essays had some good takes on heroics as a whole, a perspective without the sugar coating fed to the public that is desperately needed in the industry. Of course, the practical exam. Shinso shut his eyes tightly, hands shaking while Midoriya hesitated. Your practical exam went fairly well for someone without any training or a physical quirk. His eyes snapped open. I got only 16 points. How in the hell is that fairly well? It could have been 0, the greenette replied with a shrug. Yet there you were, running through the streets with nothing but a stray piece of rebar, trying to beat up robots 5 times your size. Histoshi could still remember the stinging pain in his hands from where the rebar tore at his skin. You even nearly got yourself crushed by yanking that one kid out of the way. Shinso scowled. Yeah, the one that punched me for keeping him from being the one crushed. Believe me when I say that he was dealt with, the greenette chirped in a way too chipper tone. Then, growing more somber, he continued. Still, you never gave up. You kept fighting. That's more than a lot of the test-goers can say. And well, I also have a bit of a selfish reason for this. Oh? Shinso asked with a quirked brow. What would that be? That you're like me. Okay, Sunshine Boy how? Izuku sputtered over being called a Sunshine Boy before explaining, I read your middle school file. That's the moment when Shinso flipped. Jumping up from his seat, he slammed his hands on the desk. You did what? He was angry, irrationally angry, but still, the notes the teachers made about him, the accusations, the black marks, just had to double-check the villain kid's file, huh? That made Izuku's face flip from shock and confusion to rage in a split second. I'm sorry, what? Rising from his chair as Shinso flinched ever so slightly from the look on the boy's face, he watched Midoriya soften but still maintain a stern look. Shinso, who told you that you were a villain? You're not kidding, right? He let out a weak laugh. You've not seen my quirk. It's a villain's quirk dash. There is no such thing, Izuku interrupted, not unkindly but in a firm tone. A quirk is a tool. Nothing more, nothing less. He scoffed, dropping his gaze to the ground while muttering. Tell that to literally everyone else in my life. Everything will be all right, Izuku my boy. Said boy practically vibrated in place, darting around the room and fussing over every detail. His own nervous energy was driving him up a wall, and if he had the time, he would have dashed off to the campus quirk-resistant gyms to burn off some steam. But seeing as how they would be back soon, he did not have time to do so. I just want to make sure that everything is ready for him, Izuku mutters quietly, fussing over the bed sheets once again. They were a simple, standard set that had just been in the closet, but it was the best they could do on short notice. He hoped Shinso wouldn't mind. They were fortunate to have the spare bed in storage on campus, and Izuku had spent all the time with Yagi focusing on making the room perfect. It had previously been an office space for Izuku and Aizawa in their on-campus apartment, but Aizawa always ended up working at the dining table anyway. There were still piles of paperwork and discarded coffee mugs covering the poor table. He desperately wanted to clean it up and organize, but Aizawa insisted he had a system, and Izuku preferred to work either sprawled on his bed or in his school office, so it's not like the room was getting much use anyway. So, Aizawa's untouched desk was shoved into the corner for Shinso to use if he desired, whereas Izuku's was dragged into his own room. Bookshelves were rearranged, 2 removed to help keep the room from feeling overcrowded. Aizawa's room was now very overcrowded, but the man wouldn't mind. He crashed on the couch more often than not. Lastly, the bed was assembled easily enough, and not knowing where else to put it in the apartment since they already had one in every room, the cat tower was left in the corner for now. Oh God, did Shinso even like cats? A large, bony hand settled heavily on his shoulder, making him nearly jump out of his skin. Yagi chose to not acknowledge the boy's jitteriness, knowing that it would only make things worse. If he still requires anything else, we can take him shopping over the weekend. A small, shaky smile grew on the greenette's face, thankful for his mentor's steady presence. While Izuku had not allowed his mentor to help move furniture, having the man around to help him keep his head on straight was appreciated. Before Izuku could even think to say anything else, he could distantly hear the front door swing open and he let out a distressed eep. Darting out into the hall and skidding to a halt, he offered the pair a nervous smile. Aizawa simply quirked a brow, an amused look on his face over how nervous the boy was, whereas Shinso just stared in shock before blurting out, "What are you doing here?" Laughing nervously, Izuku sheepishly scratched his head. I sort of live here." Aizawa snorted. "He's like a stray cat. You feed him, and he won't go away. More like you showed me basic human affection, and I decided I would die for you," Izuku quipped back before his brain caught up to his mouth, and he began to stutter out apologies. Strolling further into the apartment, the older man simply ruffled the brunette's hair, fondly muttering, "Problem child." Looking back towards Shinso, who was staring at the two warily, Aizawa gestured for him to follow. "Come on, problem child number 2, knowing Izuku, he's already started setting up your room." "More like he already finished the room," Yagi called out as he stepped out of said room. "We were limited in what we had, but it's certainly a good start. You know young Izuku tends to go plus ultra in everything." Shinso eyed the green-haired boy, watching him go red in the face before burying said face in his hands, letting out quiet, overwhelmed screams. With a small smirk, Shinso turned his attention back towards the newcomer. He looked familiar, but Shinso felt like he would have recognized the blonde skeleton more easily if he had met him before. "Do you live here too?" "Oh heavens no," the man replied with a dry laugh. "I was just staying with Izuku till you two returned. But I will leave you 3 to it." Fondly ruffling Izuku's hair, which Shinso was beginning to realize was a trend, the man warmly stated, "If any of you need anything, please let me know. We can take young Shinso shopping for everything else he needs this weekend." The boy in question was startled. "That's not necessary, I have everything I need, and I couldn't bother you dash." "Oh, I'm sure you will think of some things by the weekend," the skeleton replied, waving his protests off. "And I have more money than I know what to do with, so it's certainly not a bother." Izuku chuckled. "Trust me, Shinso, it's not worth the argument. Once Toshinori-san gets his mind set on something, you can either go along with it or let him go unattended. Unattended is much, much worse." "I'm not that bad. Toshinori-san." "But dash. Toshinori-san." The blonde huffed. "All right, you didn't need," ruffling the kid's hair again a bit more playfully, spurring cries of protest from the boy, he grinned and teased, "And I told you to drop the honorific. If you two are done?" Both yelped, sending sheepish looks to Aizawa like two kids caught doing something they shouldn't, but Aizawa only smiled softly. "Come on, Shinso has had a long day. We should let him rest." That seemed to spark something in Izuku. "Oh, right. I'm so sorry." Darting forward, he swiftly grabbed Shinso's bag before he could protest and began to head back towards the room, calling out for Shinso to follow him. "We'll get you settled and then we can discuss arson." Shinso blinked. "Discuss what?" Midoriya began to reply, but Aizawa cut him off. "Problem child, you are not setting fire to his previous foster parents' house." "But dash. Repeat after me, hero students do not commit arson." "But what about dash?" "Hero students do not commit arson." Silence. "So help me, I will extend your shaming in the chat dash." "Fine. Hero students don't commit arson." Izuku quickly shouted, waving his arms in the air. Aizawa simply smirked. "Glad you understand." Shinso just stared, before quietly muttering, "What the F?" Shinso woke to the smell of bacon. Blinking dazedly up at the ceiling, his brow furrowed as he tried to shake off the remnants of sleep and process where in the hell he was. Usually, his foster home was so much louder first thing in the morning, and he could not recall the last time he woke up this comfortable. But then everything that happened yesterday came crashing back down on him as he jolted up in the bed. The sun trickled in slightly through the windows, illuminating the room as he tried his best to get his bearings. Last night had been a bit of a cluster, with Izuku rambling nervously the whole time, helping Shinso unpack his meager belongings in the sparse room before offering him leftover katsudon. He vaguely remembers scarfing down the food in some zombie mode before shuffling off to the room. His room to pass out on his bed. Now, hair disheveled and still clad in his ratty, oversized pajamas, he shuffled out into the main room, hesitantly approaching the kitchen where he could faint humming. Following the sound and smell, he came upon a familiar head of curly green hair. The boy was dressed in loose workout clothes with tight compression sleeves underneath the shirt, cheeks flush from having just finished said workout, hair a little limp from sweat. In front of him, he was carefully using tongs to remove the last of the bacon from the frying pan with a satisfied sound in the back of his throat. The humming slowly morphed into near silent muttering, a low buzz of words that felt almost comforting to Shinso. While he still was not sure what to make of the boy, he begrudgingly admitted to himself that he was likely harmless. Mostly, the threat of arson was still fresh in his mind, but the tiny boy could not have been serious, right? Clearing his throat, he could not help but snicker as Midoriya jumped about a foot in the air, yelping in surprise. "Shinso! You scared me!" Midoriya shouted, but not unkindly, a smile beginning to bloom on the short boy's face. "I was just finishing up some breakfast after my morning run. Hungry?" The loud growl of Shinso's stomach was all the response either needed, Midoriya snickering while Shinso could feel his face growing hot. Soon, they both found themselves settled on the couch, seeing as how the dining room table seemed to be overrun with piles of papers and coffee mugs. Speaking of coffee, Shinso practically inhaled his cup the moment they sat down. Last night might have been his best sleep in years, but that still did not make up for the backlog of insomnia he had been dealing with. As Midoriya plowed through a worrying amount of food, which was explained away as being his high-calorie diet for his intense workout routine, Aizawa finally made his presence known, stumbling out into the main area, looking half dead. "Coffee's in the pot, sensei," Midoriya called out, receiving a grunt in supply as the man in question shuffled off towards the kitchen. Then, along came a loud yowling sound, followed by the pattering of feet. "Oh boy, they're awake," Midoriya quipped with an amused tone. "Who?" Shinso asked in confusion, only to soon after receive his answer in the form of a large, furry creature plopping in his lap. He blinked at the giant fluffy mankin cat who slowly blinked in return, only to then let out the loudest, most broken yowl he had ever had the displeasure of hearing. "That's Present Mike," Midoriya answers with a fond smile. "She is very vocal." Shinso scoops the cat up under the arms and holds her in the air. She quietly stares before slowly extending her paw and gently booting him on the nose. "I would die for her." She lets out another tone-deaf screech. Midoriya nods as if Shinso's reaction was rational. "She's a little deaf, so we think that's why she yells so loudly. The others are less vocal." Shinso's eyes grew wide. "There's more." And thus began the series of Midoriya darting around the apartment, reappearing ever so often to dump another cat in his lap. First is an older white cat with pale blue eyes that Izuku sits down almost reverently. This is BSTRD. She is the queen. Aizawa has had her since she was a kitten that he found during high school. She spends 90% of her day sleeping in Aizawa's room, 5% eating, and the rest beating up the twins when they annoy her. Shinso gently pet the purring cat. "She's perfect." Next was the twins in question. A pair of solid black cats with bright green eyes. This is Nekanori and Cat. The names are interchangeable, no one can really tell them apart and neither really leave the other's side. They are constantly fighting and trying to get the others to join in, hence why BSTRD has to beat them up on the regular. Midoriya began to look around the room warily. And lastly, "Oh, hello." Shinso was staring down at a very, very fat calico at his feet. The cat looked as if she had seen better days, both ears nicked, one eye missing, and her tail bent at a weird angle. She was currently purring like a truck engine, rubbing against Shinso's legs before flopping down on his bare feet. Midoriya looked nervous. "That's Toe. Toe. She earned that name." "What do you mean dash?" "Obu, the hell?" Midoriya watched the cat in question trot off into the depths of the apartment, likely to find a new hiding spot to launch herself out of. She earned the name because she likes to bite toes. Laying on the ground, clutching his now throbbing toe, he glared up at the greenette. "Gee, thanks for the warning." "Consider it initiation to the apartment," Aizawa drawled, wandering back into the room holding a steaming mug and the fresh pot of coffee. "I found her after a villain fight where I lost my shoe and sock. Came darting out of nowhere from behind a dumpster just to bite my toe while I was talking to the police." So you just brought her home? Aizawa took a long drink from his mug. She earned it. Well, okay then. Dropping down on the couch, Aizawa set the coffee pot on the end table while BSRD crawled over to sprawl on his lap. So, today I'm going to be heading into school while you both stay here. Before Shinso could interject, Aizawa cut him off. Your teachers have already been informed, and you've been excused from classes and assignments for today. None of them were going over anything too intense today anyways. Eyeing the kid until he settled and accepted his fate, Aizawa then nodded before continuing. We need to finish up the paperwork to get you officially transferred over into my care. And besides, he turned his attention back towards Midoriya. You and Izuku need to work on your new apprenticeship program anyway. Said boy immediately perked up. Oh, that would be perfect. I have some basic training schedules and meal plans drawn up already. Meal plans? The older man's eyes narrowed. I hope you aren't planning to put him on the same routine as you. Oh, of course not. Izuku vehemently denied. That would be mean. Why would it be mean? Shinso asked cautiously. I think I can handle a more intense workout dash. Problem child, how much can you bench now? Midoriya tapped his chin in thought. Around 625 pounds for reps. I free lifted 720 pounds last week through. Holy shit. Language. Then the pro chuckled. Still think you can handle Izuku's training regime? Shinso stared in fear at the tiny but apparently jacked boy next to him. Why in the hell do you need to lift that much? Is that with your quirk? Blinking, Midoriya sheepishly began to scratch his head. Well no, that's not with my quirk, but I have to maintain this level of muscle mass to utilize my quirk, otherwise I risk fracturing bones. Again, holy shit. Language. About 20 minutes later, Aizawa left the apartment to go meet up with the teachers and coordinate lesson plans for the day. Since the apartment was on campus, Midoriya was able to assure Aizawa that everything would be fine and that if he needed the man, he would call. Then Midoriya began to tease the man about mother henning them, earning a light smack to the back of the head before their caretaker finally headed out. And thus, the two were now sprawled on the ground, working out the finer details of Shinso's new apprenticeship. Netsu-sensei promised to handle any of the legal paperwork and such, so we do not have to worry about that for now, Midoriya explained with a bright smile as he pulled out a large folder. Now, all we have to worry about is making sure you have a proper training plan. You mentioned that I could join some of the heroics classes? Shinso interjected carefully, as if worried the offer would be rescinded. Midoriya, thankfully, did not comment on the nervous tone. Yeah, but unfortunately, you cannot actually participate in them. You can watch from the sidelines with me, and then later during our personal training sessions if you have anything you wanted to discuss or work on, we can actually practice. While slightly disappointed that he could not actually join the training, he would take what he could get. Do I have to tell them? Midoriya looked up from his paperwork. Tell who what? Tell the other heroic students what my quirk is and how it works. Oh, no, you don't, and I was going to suggest keeping it a secret anyway. Seeing how quickly Shinso's face went blank, Midoriya immediately backpedaled. I just meant so that it would be a surprise. That way you have the advantage in the sports festival. Oh. They are all good kids, I swear, Midoriya explained carefully. None of them would judge you for your quirk. With a snort he drawled, kids? As if you aren't our age. Blinking owlishly, the green tea muttered a soft, oh yeah, ducking his head, he added, I guess, it's just been so long since I've hung out with people my age, I haven't felt like a kid in a while. Silence fell between them for a beat, but not an uncomfortable one. Then, Shinso bluntly asked, yesterday you said you were like me and mentioned middle school. Could you elaborate? Midoriya bit his lip, seeming lost in thought. Well, I guess I should start by saying I'm a late bloomer as far as quirks goes. I grew up quirkless. And Shinso now understood. If anyone was treated worse than the villain kid, it was the quirkless one. Because while he was feared, at least he was treated like a person. Shinso had known one quirkless girl back at his old middle school. While he never spoke to her, they both had a silent camaraderie. When one had their notes destroyed, The other would silently hand over a copy when no one was looking. When one knew where the bullies were lurking that day, they would wordlessly nudge the other in another direction. When one was injured, the other would help bandage their wounds without comment. She fortunately had good parents, ones who were well enough off to move her over to Europe, where the quirkless were not as much of a minority and discrimination was lower. The thought made Shinso concerned as to why Midoriya was in Aizawa's care. He needed to change the subject so his thoughts would not keep spiraling with concern for the boy. When did your quirk come in? During the UA entrance exam dash. What? So much for stopping the concern. Midoriya held his hands up and rapidly began to explain. Apparently I needed specific requirements in order for my quirk to appear, and between working out and training for the exam and the actual stress of the exam, my quirk finally manifested. Then he nervously pulled off the compression sleeve on his arm to show off a myriad of scars. Doctors think my body was holding off till I could handle it without killing myself, like a fail-safe, but I still can't quite handle it at 100%. I can maintain around 27, but I can do a limited burst of 40 if need be. Holy shit. Shinso wasn't thinking when he reached out and grabbed Midoriya's arm, pulling it closer and staring intensely at the scars. Your quirk did this. I've gotten better. The shorter boy defended in a slightly panicked tone. I don't break my bones when I use my quirk anymore, so long as I keep it within a reasonable level dash. Izuku. Breathe. Finally seeming to register that he was holding the boy's arm, he quickly grew flustered. Oh, sorry. No. It's fine dash. I also did not mean to use your first name dash. Shinso, it's fine. I don't mind you using it. An awkward pause fell between the two, Shinso's grip tightening then loosening several times before he finally blurted out, "Then call me Hitoshi." Izuku's hand twisted in Hitoshi's grip, and he lightly squeezed the boy's wrist while a warm smile grew on his face. I'd like that. Before either could say anything else, alarms began to blare from outside, and Hitoshi suddenly found himself thrown over the tiny boy's shoulder. Izuku, what the dash? Hang on. And Hitoshi will forever deny letting out the most embarrassing shriek as he suddenly found himself practically flying through the air as Izuku leapt out the open window in a blur of green lightning and darted off towards the main building. 4 hours earlier, the door to 1A slammed open and everyone scrambled to sit as their teachers strolled into the room. Scanning all the students, Aizawa briefly nodded before speaking. You are all getting better. Now for today's announcements. Leaning forward on the podium, his tone was bored. Izuku will not be available today. Some personal matters came up. Quiet and worried chatter filtered through the room as Uraraka nearly jolted out of her seat. Is Deku-kun okay? He is fine, I promise, he replied, his tone a tad bit more gentle. It's more of a paperwork issue than anything. He will be in class tomorrow. Hesitantly, she nodded, though she clearly still looked a bit concerned for her senpai, as did several others in the class. Staying on topic, Aizawa continued. And now, for today's assignment, something that will drastically affect your careers here at UA. Pausing for a dramatic beat, seeing shoulders tense in worry, he finally puts them out of their misery. It's time to pick class representatives. Several hands shot up in the air. No, you cannot nominate Izuku. All the hands went back down. 20 minutes later, Yaoyorozu is president and Ida is vice. Ida attempts to give a dramatic and heartfelt speech about the results, but conversation is very quickly turned elsewhere. I hope Midobro is okay, Kirishima comments as he turns his chair around to face others, a frown marring his face. Eyeing the garfish yellow sleeping bag, Uraraka huffs quietly. I know Sensei said that he's fine, but I still feel worried. Midoriya-kun doesn't seem like the type to miss classes unless it's serious. I'm sure he is fine, Yaoyorozu chimes in with a smile, though the concern is clear in her eyes. But we could message him in the class chat to see if he is alright. Some of us already did that, Siro chimed in with a frown. He hasn't said anything. And he hasn't been active since yesterday afternoon, Ribbit, Azui added. Mina suddenly perks up before darting over to Bakugu's desk and slamming her hands on the surface. Hey Blasty, said Blasty, jolted in his seat with a snarl. The F, did you call me? Language. Shut it, Four Eyes. Mina ignored her classmate's obvious ire. Your mom is friends with Mito's mom, right? Can you get her to ask if he's okay? Bakuga's eyes narrowed. Why the f should I? Do I look like I care about the little sheet? Lang. Learn to spot a lost cause, Ida, Uraraka interrupted before turning her attention back on Bakugo. Because clearly this guy has the emotional capabilities of a rabid chihuahua. His hands slammed on the desk and explosions crackled under his palms as he spat out, The F, did you say to me? No destruction of property, Bakugo, their teacher calls out from his hideous cocoon. Come on, Mina begged, practically jumping in place. Can you please try? Please? F, fine, goddammit it. Digging into his pocket while Mina and a few others hooped in success, Bakugo pulled out his phone and angrily tapped out a message. But no FING promises. The old hag and auntie don't hang out as much as when Deku and I were brats. Still, Yaoyorozu began with a warm smile. The attempt is appreciated, Bakugo. Just to ease our minds. Whatever. His phone buzzed and he scooped it up to read his mom's response, only for his eyes to nearly pop out of his head. The F dash. Several classmates moved to try and read the screen, but Bakugo quickly yanked the phone away, shouting, F off extras. You ain't seen this sheet. Uraraka bristled. What's wrong? Is Midoriya-kun okay? I said, off. She jumped up from her seat. If something's wrong. It's FNG personal, round face. Bakugo snapped back, sounding far more aggressive than before. Drop it? But. Drop. I would listen to Bakugo. All eyes snapped to their teacher who glared from where he stood at the front of the room. Bakugo, I assume I know what your mother said, and you are right to not share it. It's a sensitive topic. The blonde nodded sharply, shoving his phone back in his pocket with a look that was equal parts angry and confused. Now, let me tell you all that Izuku's personal life is none of your concern. Do not press Bakugo for details, and do not press Izuku once he returns. Am I clear? A chorus of yes, sensei, spread throughout the room, causing the man to sharply nod in approval of the appropriately chastised looks. Good. Seeing the slightly dejected faces, he sighs. I swear, Izuku is fine. I'll try to have him message you all in the chat later today, however. That seemed to perk up the class as a whole, and with Aizawa muttering something about problem children and crawling back into his sleeping bag. Chatter slowly began to filter through the room once more, though a bit more hesitant than before. Everyone, however, was vaguely aware of the usually bombastic blonde glaring silently at his. The rest of the day was rather uneventful up until lunch at the very least. The stampede in the hallway was rather unfortunate, though Ida's quick thinking mixed with Uraraka's quirk and the megaphone Yaoyorozu shoved in his hands helped to calm that down. Though none of them were prepared to see a familiar green blur dash into view outside the window. They watched as Izuku, clad in familiar red shoes, baggy gym shorts, and a t-shirt that simply read, breathes, propelled himself up and over the crowd of reporters, grabbing the top of the doorway where Aizawa and Yamada resided and leaning down to talk to them, blatantly ignoring the reporters. One tall, overzealous reporter took it upon themselves to launch forward and practically shove the mic into Izuku's face, and they watched him go through a flurry of emotions. Nervous, irritated, and then a familiar, eerie smile. While most could not know what he said, they knew the body language, could see the intimidating way he leaned down from his hanging perch, could practically hear the dangerous chirp in his tone. They watched the reporter's irritation quickly melt into fear, and soon after, all the reporters were scrambling. Later, a snickering Jairu and Shuji would elaborate on how Izuku had brought up a combination of laws regarding interviewing minors without guardian consent and musings about how easily Nedzu could get an entire news station blacklisted from interviewing licensed heroes with charges of breaking into a hero school. Needless to say, the reporters finally realized what they had done, and promptly packed up and left before any arrests could be made. Oh, and throughout this all, They noted that Izuku had a very tired-looking purple-haired boy on his back that looked equal parts frustrated with and terrified of the feral cinnamon roll. He also appeared partially to be a hostage based on how he would occasionally try to wiggle out of the green-haired boy's unbreakable grasp before giving in to his fate. A few words were exchanged between the boys and the teachers before Snipe found them all gawking in the hall and quickly shooed the whole lot of them back to class. It didn't register with anyone until later to question how Izuku ended up on UA grounds in the first place. Arson. Hostage. That went fairly well, chirped the green-haired boy as he finally dropped from his spot hanging from the building entrance to the ground. A snort resonated from the teacher beside him. Only you would think threatening a bunch of reporters into running away counts as fairly well. The boy shrugged. I wouldn't exactly call it threatening. More like pointing out their mistakes and possible consequences of said mistakes. Besides, they're gone now, and no one had to attack them. He gave a pointed stare at Mike as he said the last part. Mike grinned sheepishly. They were technically trespassing, and their whole careers revolve around overinflating stories on the booze. Let's not give them any ammo. As riveting as I find you scolding the cockatoo, Aizawa drawled, ignoring the offended, hey. From said cockatoo, the teacher asked, care to tell us what you are doing here? Midoriya blinked. The alarm went off. And so your first instinct was to run towards it? Well, when you say it like that. Aizawa let out a long, tired groan. And can you please explain why you have Shinso in a death grip? Said purple-haired boy braced his hands on Midoriya's back, shoving his torso up to look over the boy's shoulder as he half shouts, I am here against my will. Midoriya seemed to finally realize that he had the taller boy trapped in his hold on his shoulder. Oh, I'm so sorry. He lets the boy go, unintentionally dropping his friend on the ground. Wait, sheet. Language, problem child, Aizawa interjects, staring in amusement as Midoriya fussed over Shinso who still remained sprawled on the ground, glaring up at the sky as if it offended him. 5 minutes later, they and several other teachers stood in a semicircle around the front gate, sharing worried looks. What happened? Midnight muttered, staring in confusion at the remains of the gate. Frowning, Izuku edged forward, ignoring the quiet, careful, problem child from his sensei. He dropped into a crouch and hesitantly reached out to scoop up the dusted remnants of the gate, letting out a small sound of awe. No signs of any acid or corrosive material, nor any signs of an explosion, certainly the result of a quirk, something that turned the entire reinforced steel gate into nothing but dust. Likely touch-based considering how closely clustered the reporters were to the gate, anything from a distance likely would have resulted in damage to them or their equipment and none reported such an issue. Twisting his head over towards the others, he queried, did the security tapes not show the perpetrator? The principal shook his head. Whoever it was had been careful when slipping into the crowd of reporters at the gate. And before you ask, it was not any of the reporters or the camera crews. None had quirks that matched this kind of damage. That caused many of them to frown in concern. So who would have done this? Snipe chimed in. We need to see if any of the reporters would be willing to share their video footage with us, Midoriya suggested as a follow-up. Perhaps we can figure out who it was from the tapes. Someone purposefully let those reporters in, Midoriya began, standing up and turning to face them. They either saw this as an opportunity to mess with the school, or someone did this for a reason. But why? 13 blurted out. We intend to find out, Aizawa replied bluntly. In the meantime, let's exercise caution, just to be safe. Midoriya by that point had devolved into a mutter storm, hand propped in front of his mouth and brows scrunched as he fell deep in thought. The teachers all watched on fondly while Shinso simply blinked. Is that normal for him? Chuckling, Snipe crossed his arms as he drawled, oh yeah. Midori here is known for his mumbling rambles. The boy is too smart for his own good and his head doesn't know how to handle it otherwise. Shinso blinked. Huh. The muttering continued. About how long does it last? With a chuckle, Present Mike spoke up. The record is what, 2 hours? 7 actually. What the hell, Shoyuda? Midnight snapped. You let the poor bean go on for that long? Aizawa grinned ferally at the green-haired kid, who now had a notebook from who knows where and was scribbling furiously. I let him look at the Shibuya gang case last year and asked for matchup suggestions. He rather enjoyed writing those profiles. That's still a long time, 13 chimed in nervously. And that was a serious case. He ate whenever I shoved food in front of his face. Midoriya suddenly dropped to sit on the ground, scratching away at the paper. And he led us to winning that fight with 0 casualties. Everyone stared at the green-haired teen for a moment before Snipe spoke up. All who agree that the green bean is terrifying just from his brain alone, raise your hand. All hands went up, even Nedzu's paw as he cackled in delight. Midoriya still did not stop muttering. Breaking Midoriya from his ramble session a few minutes later, Aizawa decided to lead the 2 boys towards the teacher's lounge. You can both wait in there until the school day is over, and then you can share with me what ideas you have for a training regime. Nodding in thought, Midoriya chirps, I definitely think Hitoshi should learn how to use your capture scarf. Wait, really? Shinso chimed in, both boys missing Aizawa's surprise at Izuku using the other's given name. It doesn't really have anything to do with my quirk. The short boy snorted. It doesn't really have anything to do with Sensei's quirk either, but it's very useful for capturing villains. Chuckling, Aizawa shook off his surprise, because really, nothing about the problem child should surprise him anymore, and drawls. You just want to see him struggle as much as you did when I first started training you how to use it. You're so mean. Of course. He roughly ruffled the pouting boy's hair. Not my fault that you forget. Wait, Shinso interjects. You learned how to use it too? Nodding, a small smile crossed Midoriya's face. Yeah, I wanted to learn how my sensei fought. Said Sensei burrowed his face in his own capture scarf, a faint smile on his face. Besides, it's only logical to have a way to restrain villains. Mine is a bit of a modified version, but it's effective. Shaking his head, Midoriya added, but we are getting ahead of ourselves. You can't have support gear during the festival that isn't for the purpose of protecting you from quirk drawbacks. So, let's focus on strength and endurance on top of quirk training for now. Midoriya Izuku. All 3 froze, and Izuku's face went ghost white, a look of impending doom in his eyes. She is going to kill me. Shinso startled. Who is going to what now? Before anyone else could say anything, a tiny blur came sprinting out of nowhere, tackling the greenette to the ground. Shinso watched in horror while Aizawa just seemed exasperated. As a tiny blonde girl straddled Izuku's waist, grabbed him by the front of his shirt, and yanked him up from the ground. Where have you been? School started days ago and not even a single visit to the labs. Tears began to form in the girl's eyes as her lip began to wobble. Aizu-chan, do you hate me? The boy in question rapidly shook his head. No, I am so sorry. Things have just been so crazy between school and DE and other things. The girl sniffled, and Izuku's panic skyrocketed. Wait, don't cry, I'm so sorry. The girl latched to him in what looked like a bone-crushing hug, letting out an excited squeal. Oh, I'm so relieved. I was so worried that you didn't want to be my friend anymore. Of course I'm still your friend, Himi-chan. Another round of squealing broke from the girl as the others watched on. I am so confused, Shinso whispered under his breath, watching the tiny greenette who could easily break a person in half be nearly strangled to death by a tiny girl with her blonde hair twisted up into messy twin buns, wearing a pair of loose support course overalls covered in what looked like soot. Aizawa snorted. Those 2 have an interesting relationship. Yeah, well, I guess they are just really good friends? Before he could think of anything else, FaeQueenInu asked, Can you share? Pretty please. It's been so long. Midoriya laughed, shaking his head with a fond look on his face. Okay, I owe you for being radio silent for the past few days. But just a little. I still have training later this afternoon. And suddenly, the girl is squealing again, moving to kneel next to Izuku rather than straddle him. She grabs his arm that doesn't have the compression sleeve on, and promptly, much to Shinso's horror, chomps on his arm. Shinso thinks the strangled yelp he let out in response was fully justified.